We're ready to go live, Mayor Kate.
Thank you. So welcome to the regular meeting of the San Rafael City Council for April 19th. I will request the city clerk to call roll, please.
Vice Mayor Bushy.
Present.
Councilmember Hill.
Present.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Present.
Councilmember Urens-Galati.
Present.
Mayor Kate.
Present. All five of us are present, accounted for. If I could ask the city attorney to report out if there was any decisions made in the closed session we held previously to this moment.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Kate, members of the council, members of the community. So good to see everyone here on Zoom. No reportable action was taken in closed session this evening.
Thank you, city attorney. So thank you and welcome to everyone out there in our virtual world, to our community, to our city watching tonight. We're delighted you're here. And it's always wonderful to see the incredible professionals on your screen. We do that for a reason, so people realize and understand the people that are making things work so well in City Hall. And sometimes during the meeting, it was just the five of us up there. People might forget that it's actually a whole team of people working to keep our city working so well. So my opening remarks, every meeting is intended to provide the moment for us to acknowledge both the events beyond our borders of our city as well as those within. And beyond our borders, unfortunately, the epidemic of gun violence continues to plague our nation, and I know it saddens all of us. So we're looking inward. What are actions that we can take here? And I'm pleased to share that Chief Spiller and the San Rafael Police Department will be working with the county on a gun buyback event, tentatively scheduled for the fall. In addition, we'll support a new county effort to launch a gun safety collaborative, and we'll keep you updated as to both of those initiatives as we are working with our partners over at the County of Marin. This week, we have Earth Day to celebrate. So I think it's on Thursday. And as part of the city's efforts to give TLC back to our planet, I do ask all of you that I can see on the screen and those that I can't to consider taking the Water Conservation Pledge. You can find out more about it by going to the city website, typing in sustainability to the search bar. And you've heard it before, and it remains true. Every drop counts. So I want to see everyone's super dirty cars in the parking lot, no clean cars out there. And it's through our collective action that we will make a difference and get through this drought. And speaking of working together, because this is really what city government is about, it's all of us collaborating and coming together to make our community a better place. We all on this screen celebrate and appreciate the diversity and beliefs of all cultures in our city. As Supervisor Rice did at our most recent Board of Supervisor meeting, I want to acknowledge that we are in the month of Ramadan, which is a holy month of fasting and spiritual renewal for Muslims worldwide. Bay Area Muslims are part of the fabric of our community, and we recognize them for their contributions, rich cultural heritage, and wide diversity that they bring. This Ramadan, the Bay Area Muslim community reminds us that our freedom to worship benefits all of us and should be celebrated. And similarly, we want to acknowledge the land on which we're sitting throughout San Rafael. Some of us are in San Rafael, some are near San Rafael, before we get into our agenda tonight. And we recognize that the city of San Rafael is traditionally home to the Coast Miwok people. We honor their continuing involvement in stewardship practices that will help us as a community to build back better together. And if you don't know what Build Back Better is, you can go watch the video from last meeting where we talked about building back better, and it will be a theme that we will continue to pursue in 2021. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to the city clerk to tell or to share with our community how they can participate in tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Kate. At this time, I'd like to ask staff to please turn their cameras off. Thank you so much. This meeting is being recorded and streamed live to YouTube, where viewers can provide comments in the live chat, or they're welcome to attend by telephone by calling 669-900-9128 and using the meeting ID 899-2635-9885 #, or they can comment and watch directly through Zoom using the link on the agenda. If you're commenting over the telephone, please press *9 when Mayor Kate opens the public comment period. Once you hear a notification that the host is inviting you to speak, please press *6 to unmute yourself. If you're commenting through Zoom, please use the raised hand button to let us know that you'd like to speak and wait until you've been unmuted. If you're commenting through YouTube's live chat, please write public comments in caps, introduce yourself, and submit your comments to have them read aloud into the record. Please note that there is a character limit on YouTube, so please submit your comments in groups. And if you've submitted comments prior to the meeting by email or letter, they have been forwarded to the City Council and they've been published to our website along with our agenda. And closed captioning is available for this meeting, and the link to our closed captioning is available in the live chat as well. Thank you. Mayor Kate, you're muted.
Totally did the not mute. Unmuted. Okay, well, we can all laugh about that later. Okay, the first thing on our agenda this evening is open time for public expression. So this is where we invite any member of the public to speak to the council on an item not on tonight's agenda. So do you see anything?
Yeah, and as I just said, if you're calling in, go ahead and press *9. And once I've requested you unmute, you'll need to press *6 to unmute your phone. And I do have a caller.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Kate and council members. This is Kate Powers. I'm speaking on behalf of your Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. We sent a letter that's attached to your agenda, and in it, we are encouraging the City Council to act on San Rafael's behalf to urge SMART's Board of Directors to include full funding or seek grants for full funding for the environmental review, engineering design, permitting, and full construction of the segment of the SMART pathway from Puerto Suelo Hill down to North San Pedro Road in North San Rafael. The SMART board is currently planning capital projects which include construction and expansion of pathway systems as part of its goal setting and budgeting process for 2021. The gap closure in this area has two alternative routes that do not meet the needs of most abilities of bicyclists and pedestrians for all ages and abilities. On the west side is Los Ranchitos Road, and that is constrained in space and visibility around curves that make it dangerous. There's no room for expansion because of slopes on either side. And Marydale, down from Puerto Suelo Hill to Point San Pedro Road, is a very steep grade. So in our advisory capacity, we're urging you to use this opportunity, this funding opportunity while SMART has funding available to move environmental review, design and time-sensitive construction preparation forward. We hope you will agendize this action for your next council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Hi, this is Justin Barnett. I'd like to comment on the transit center, and I think that the city council really needs to consider the desires of all citizens of San Rafael. The Golden Gate Transit has been focusing on transit users, and there's a larger population at San Rafael to be considered. Tiburon and Mill Valley and Sausalito and not even Novato don't have a big bus station as some sort of city centerpiece, which is two of the three choices that the Golden Gate Transit District has offered as solutions for the existing transit center. And there's artist renditions that present an exciting addition or some sort of destination. And that's never really going to be the case. It's just going to be a bus station. And I don't understand why the citizens of San Rafael or the business owners would want a centerpiece that's the entrance to the main business district to be a bus station, which is going to clog that whole 4th Street area with bus traffic and noise. And the current transit center is what the new transit center would end up looking like. It's just going to be a bus stop, and I don't think that elevates San Rafael at all. I'm a business owner in Santa Fe, and the 4th Street Gateway concept would tear down my significant investment in my Victorian that graces the entrance to Santa Fe currently. I think that the under the freeway option avoids what would be what I call the uglification of Santa Fe as the most efficient option. It avoids destruction of the gracious Victorians that I and my neighbor own, and the possible inundation of other historic structures under the whistle stop option. And
thank you, Mr. Barnett. I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt. So you get a certain amount of time, but I have good news for you because this item is actually on our agenda. So if you would like to offer additional input, stay tuned. We have a few more agenda items before we get to it, but you can call in and give additional time then and input then. Okay?
Sure. I didn't see that there was a public comment on that time, but I will.
Oh, there is. Don't you worry. Don't you worry.
I have, but not a lot. But thank you, Kate.
You'll have the same amount of time, and I appreciate. I do encourage you. And if you have to leave, you can always put something in the chat or however City Clerk just described it, and it can be read into the record. We value your input. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and check YouTube. And it does look like that concludes public comment for items that are not on this evening's agenda.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We will move along to the City Manager's report. City Manager Schutz, here he is.
Thank you, Mayor Kate and Council. Tonight I have several updates and announcement, but most are very brief, so I'll move quickly through them. I'm going to start with a COVID-19 update. As everyone knows, we're still in Tier 3, the orange tier, but the goalpost recently moved to get into Tier 4, the yellow tier, when the state moved one of the criteria that's called adjusted cases per day per 100,000 residents. And that used to be, it had to be less than one adjusted case per day per 100,000 residents, and it recently moved to 2. The reason why that's important is because Marin has been at 1.7. So we had met the yellow tier criteria a couple weeks ago, the week before last. And so if we've met it again last week, which we'll know that data tomorrow, then we've met our 2 weeks of meeting the yellow tier criteria, which is why we could go as early as Wednesday of this week into the yellow tier if that's the case. So we don't know yet. We'll find out tomorrow whether we have 2 weeks at that yellow tier criteria. We know we have at least 1, and we know things seem like they have been stable or not getting worse. So it seems likely, but we won't find out until tomorrow whether we'll be moving into the yellow tier this week. With the yellow tier, it's not a huge change. It does allow some businesses to increase their capacity of people attending. For example, gyms go from 25 to 50% capacity that's allowable, and there's some changes for social gatherings as well. Restaurants could stay at 50% capacity. But again, as the council's aware, the state's talking about maybe dropping in mid-June these criteria as the state more fully reopens. So we will see some change as we move into yellow, and then we'll see more change as we go into mid-June. On vaccinations, we're now, for the county of Marin, a little bit over 2/3, 75.8% of the population that have received at least 1 dose of the vaccine. And as of last week, all people 16 years of age and older became eligible. So I know there's a lot of people that are scheduling appointments right now. The county's asking that everyone become vaccination champions and share examples of vaccinations and reasons to get vaccinated so we could get as close to 100% as possible. So I just wanted to share that I got my 2nd dose of the Moderna vaccine on Saturday morning at 8 a.m. And I expected, I kind of planned on maybe having some impacts over the weekend, but really didn't have any, just a little bit of arm soreness, and that was it. So I'm so excited that with that and more people in Marin and outside of our county getting vaccinated, we'll be able to visit parents and visit family and visit friends and things like that again. So it is quite a bit easier now with all of the different ways and places to get vaccinated in Marin to get an appointment to do so. So I encourage everyone to do that. Moving on to the American Rescue Plan. I've talked about this the last couple of council meetings. I just wanted to say that we have not received the guidance from the U.S. Department of Treasury yet. There are many categories of stimulus funding in the American Rescue Plan. The one that we've been paying attention to all of them, one that we're interested in as it relates to our own budget is for local government assistance. So we're waiting, we expect to have that guidance by March 11th, which is 60 days from the date of enactment of the American Rescue Plan, which is the date that the Treasury would need to come out with that guidance. So we will have more discussions about this topic as you go through your annual budget process, and that will be taking place really starting in your next meeting as we talk about the capital improvement program and infrastructure projects, and then continuing in May and in June to get through the annual budget process. Thank you, Mayor Kate, for mentioning Earth Day on Thursday. There's a couple related things that I wanted to get out there. We do have a number of people that are listening in on the council meeting tonight, and I wanted to let them know that the city's partnering with the Downtown Business Improvement District for an annual Clean and Green volunteer cleanup downtown and in the West End Village on Earth Day itself on Thursday. So if it works better for anyone to do a weekday, that's this Thursday, April 22nd at 10 a.m. And then on Saturday, if weekdays are not as good, our volunteer program is hosting neighborhood cleanups in a few different locations in the morning. And the Point San Pedro Road Coalition is hosting a fire prevention weed pull effort along the Shoreline Trail. So the neighborhood cleanups, starting at 10 a.m., there's a couple different ones. One is starting at the Canal Community Garden on Windward Way, and then also Spinnaker Point Drive, where it meets Portsmouth Cove, volunteers picking up litter and around that area. And then in Terra Linda, neighbors in Marydale, Rafael Meadows are planning on clearing ivy, weeds, and litter at 9 a.m., starting at the Rafael Meadows sign. So there's more specific information of exactly where to meet and what to bring, which is primarily water and gloves and your mask. And I'll ask the city clerk's office if they haven't already to put the link in the chat. It's kind of a long one, but it's largely our volunteer page at the city's website. We'll get you there, but we'll also put the link in the chat. There are a few more, 5 more actually, of the Home Key 2.0 information sessions. So that is through Opening Doors Marin is hosting a series of informational sessions. Home Key 1.0 was, as many of you know, state funding for permanent supportive housing around homelessness. And there was a City of San Rafael project at 3301 Kerner that will be converting an office building into permanent supportive housing. We expect another round of this through Home Key 2.0 to take place. And for those that are more interested and want to learn more about it, there's been a series of sessions about it, and there are still 5 more remaining, all of them this week at various points, both in the morning, afternoon, and evening. So that link we'll also put in the chat at the marincounty.org and focusing on Home Key. I did want to bring up very quickly that also this Thursday, there's a lot going on this week. There's a National Drug Take-Back Day. I think this is really important because a lot of us have unwanted or unused or expired prescription drugs in our medicine cabinets. I know I do, and I'm looking forward to Thursday to get rid of them safely because I think sometimes they could end up in the wrong hands or places where you don't intend them, or other times they could end up in our waste stream where we don't want them. So it's a great opportunity on Saturday, April 24th from 10 to 2 at our new Public Safety Center will be a collection site, and people will be able to drop off any of that unwanted drugs that they have that they want to get rid of on National Drug Take Back Day on April 24th at our Public Safety Center from 10 to 2. So you could do your neighborhood cleanup in the morning and still make it by 2 p.m. to drop off and participate in National Drug Take Back Day. A couple more things briefly. We are starting some of our in-person library services on Thursday of this week. We will resume in-person browsing at our Northgate Mall location. and also opening up in-person computing at the Pickleweed Library. And then we're still doing curbside at downtown and Pickleweed Libraries. That's where, as we move into the yellow tier, and then as we open up further beyond that, we'll continue to open up both the Pickleweed and downtown for browsing as well. But speaking of the library, at the last City Council meeting, I described at some length the library's 21-day Race and Equity Challenge. And we're still in it, so I wanted to mention it one last time. We're at day 17, so we're nearing the end, but there's still time to participate in the 21-day Race and Equity Challenge. And that's where you challenge yourself to read, watch, or listen one thing about race and equity topic each day for 21 days. If you're just hearing about it now, you can go back and do the other days at your own time. But we are at day 17. It's through the San Rafael Public Library's Facebook and Instagram pages where you can see those daily recommendations. Day 17 is today, and the recommendation for today, just as an example, there was a brief article in The Nation magazine and website called From Raising Anti-Racist Kids to Being an Anti-Racist Family by Courtney E. Martin. And there's always an opportunity to go deeper as well. There's usually something short and then something to take a little bit more time. And the go deeper today was a podcast recommendation about white parents and impacts on public schools. So a lot of great things to look at in the 21-day Race and Equity Challenge. You can kind of, now there's so many with 17, you can kind of just choose one that interests you and dive right into it. My last thing is that we typically have council meetings on the first and third Monday of every month. Occasionally we'll have a special meeting, and we do have a special meeting coming up this month on April 30th at 2 p.m. for the City Council and anyone else who'd like to join us to comment on our first draft of goals and objectives for the new coming fiscal year. So that'd be 21-22. So there will be other opportunities to comment as well, because the goals become part of our annual city budget. And actually the council formally adopts them when you formally adopt a budget, which we're expecting in June. So it won't be the only time, but we will be having a special City Council meeting on April 30th to start talking about those goals and objectives. So I just wanted to make sure people knew that that was coming, and that there'll also be other times that they can participate in that as well. So thank you, Mayor Kate. Sorry, we went on a little bit longer than usual tonight, but I appreciate the time to give those updates, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, City Manager. No, it's good stuff. Everything from the 21-day equity challenge at the library is doing to Earth Day just shows you that San Rafael is where things are happening. So if you didn't know that already, now we all know. I love the vaccination champion. I got my second one, and I saw my 88-year-old mom yesterday. I could finally hug her and not be like worried. So it's a good feeling, and I will continue to pass that along. And I know all of us here on the screen will keep doing that as well. So thank you. Next item on our agenda is Councilmember Reports. So everybody on the council has additional ways that we represent the city through our council assignments. And I'll just go through and ask you to report out on any meetings you attended. And I will start with the Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I had two interesting meetings with the Central Marin Sanitation Agency for very different ends of the spectrum. We had our first workshop on our strategic goals, in addition to the normal things that you would expect us to be discussing in efficiency improvements, adhering to all of our regulatory standards. For the first time, we're talking about putting in a strategic goal related to consolidation and shared services. As you may know, the Central Marin Sanitation Agency is comprised of 4 member agencies: the San Rafael Sanitary District, Ross Valley Sanitary District, and the portions of Corte Madera and Larkspur, each which run their own independent systems, San Rafael San and Ross Valley. So there's opportunities there, we believe, for shared services. We're just in the talking stage, but this dovetails nicely with LAFCO coming out with its training recently. So interesting topics afoot there. We also had a regular board meeting last week, and we heard an interesting presentation on an experiment that is being run by CMSA's engineers to test the level of fats, oils, and grease that can be reasonably accommodated in our digesters. They've built model digesters and are experimenting with different levels. They've put together a consortium of a number of consulting firms that are very interested in this data So it's become quite a project, and it will all be written up and published in a final report. But we heard a very interesting presentation on this. Just been plain old scientific research. They're doing a great job there. I'm very proud to hear that report. I will be celebrating Earth Day next Saturday with the Point San Pedro Road Coalition. I understand there's some weeds out there that need to get pulled. So that's what I will be doing. And I was very happy to receive my first vaccination a week and a half ago, and I'm looking forward to my second one. So thank you.
Vaccination champion, as well as attending those meetings. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 meetings to report on. San Rafael City Schools Liaison meeting was held last Thursday on April 15th, attended by our city manager, Schutz, and myself. Mayor Kate was appropriately prioritizing her second dose, another shout out. Also attended by Supervisor Connolly and the leadership from Miller Creek School District and San Rafael City Schools. Things I really want to report out on: enrollment. If you are a parent or guardian or know a parent or guardian of a student who intends to start and is not already enrolled, please start the process. There are some daunting documentation requirements, especially if you are just establishing residency. Administration will work with you, and it is a process, but we are seeking enrollment process to kick off. In-person instruction has continued to progress across elementary, middle, and high schools. I won't go into the details because each one of them is making progress for in-person instruction progressively, and it is improving. For school next year in the fall, they are planning for full opening. They will offer separate distance learning options, but I just want to make sure that is clear. And then as of last Thursday's meeting, 20 unaccompanied minors had joined our community. So to that end, newcomer counseling, a dedicated position will be engaged to help newcomers to adjust and to be introduced to new surroundings in San Rafael. The other meeting I attended was the Ad Hoc Committee on Microgrids for Marin. That was last Wednesday, April 14th. I don't want to report out anything, not because it's any secret, but really I just wanted to take the time to explain what this is, really exploring the benefits and challenges of the journey of implementing microgrids here in Marin. Benefits obviously include renewable energy, energy resilience, grid independence, public safety, power shutoff, impact mitigation, et cetera. But also, and I really want to point this out, really as an opportunity to support equity and social justice goals as an ongoing practice. However, challenges are immense, and they include large capital and money for ongoing operations. Funding resources can be very restrictive in their amounts and how they can be allocated. Heavy regulatory and legal barriers, and complex coordination among stakeholders, to name a few. But there are many headwinds. So in short, this team with Supervisor Connolly and Supervisor Rodoni had some legal students, or some law students rather, from Berkeley attend, and they are exploring some of these regulatory obstacles and finding ways to be creative in how to go through them or around them. Probably more through them. Anyway, that's my report today. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Kurtz.
Thank you, Mayor Kate. First update, I hope everyone saw the press release that was put out by the county on the homeless count. This was specifically around the vehicle count. And again, this was a sub project that was done because we did not do the formal point in time count of the homeless, but it was narrowed down to focus just on those in a vehicle count. And what the data did show was that we had a very high increase, basically a doubling of those living in vehicles, which is many times a precursor of becoming fully homeless. So the next step obviously is what happens next. And I know there's a lot of discussions around that, but we were really fortunate that so many jurisdictions within Marin County, and with the help of San Rafael Police Department and Lynn Murphy, really helped with driving the efforts for the vehicle count. So we'll get more details on that information. The second, I attended the Las Galinas Watershed Council meeting. They'd like me to express their appreciation for involvement in the 2040 plan and their inclusion of so much information and their interests represented in the 2040 plan. Of course, they don't want to wait till 2040, but they appreciate it's an ongoing project and work for that group. And there were actually a number of new voices and faces as part of that meeting. I have been participating in the Economic Development Subcommittee and also the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. So I'm very fortunate that we have the professionals here tonight to be able to share the report. So I'm going to leave it to Director Brown to provide the update on Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority and Director O'Leary for the economics. So that will be great. And I think that is it for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Yerens-Gulati.
Thank you, Mayor Kate. So my update today, I guess, is around sustainability, which is perfect. As Mayor Kate mentioned, we're celebrating Earth Day on Thursday. So last Thursday, I had two different meetings. The first one was the Climate Action Plan Quarterly Forum. And Corey Bidoff did a fabulous job presenting the update on renewing our climate action plan, which it gets updated every 2 years and is going to come to the council next month. So I will leave it at that. We were having some students from Marine Cell presenting one of the projects. So that's always very exciting. And as our city manager mentioned, I will be on Saturday, in the canal, Bay Point Canal, Spinnaker Point, doing the Earth Day cleanup as another celebration for Earth Day. So my second meeting last Thursday was the MCE board meeting, and that's always very interesting. They actually have a new resolution to approve the formation of a California Community Choice Financing Authority. And there is definitely more information about that on their website. But I wanted to mention that this is a new coalition that they will be coming together, and they are estimating to save initially $250,000 and $2.5 million over the life of each transaction. So I think it's going to be a great partnership. And again, you can go to mcecleanenergy.org for more information about that. And let's see. I look forward to our Pickleweed Commission meetings when we are going to be hiring or recruiting some commissioners for that at the end of this month or in May, actually. So I look forward to our meetings about the Alboro the community center, sorry. And finally, I also received my 2 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. I had Pfizer. I did get a little bit sick after the second one, but it only lasted for like 12 hours. And I just came back from visiting my family, unfortunately, not as a vacation, but for like family matters. And I have to say that it's such a privilege to be here in Marin County with over 75% of the population being vaccinated, because over there is barely 5%. They are really struggling to get the vaccines. So I feel very fortunate here. And I hope that we can, once everybody's vaccinated, that there are like efforts to bring the vaccines to other countries. But yeah, get vaccinated is very important. Thank you.
Thank you. We are taking our vaccination champion role seriously. I can see that. So thank you for all sharing all that. I am your TAM representative on the Transportation Authority of Marin. Part of that, I'm on an ad hoc committee for the Safe Routes to School, which is just what it sounds like. It's parents as well as a nonprofit, or actually for-profit agency, figuring out how to have safer routes. So our kids will be going to school biking and walking. They've had to go virtual. It's very much a hands-on, this is how you do it. But this last year they've been virtual, really looking at how do they assess and consider the way that they get kids engaged as we get back into it for 2021. So there'll be some, I want to say soul searching, but really how do they continue to move the needle is a good way to look at it. So it's a great project to be involved in, and that is really at a county-wide level. So we both San Rafael specific things that we do, but really looking from a broad standpoint. So we'll keep you up to date as things start to go back to in real life versus virtual. So thank you, as always, to the 4 professionals on which I share this virtual dais. The fact that you are out in the community beyond the meetings that we had tonight means a lot. And it shows how important it is for us to engage with our community and how seriously we all take it. So thank you. Okay, now we're going to get to the business portion. We have the consent calendar. There's several items on there. If any of you would like an item to be held, let me know or unmute yourself.
Mayor Kate, I would not like to remove an item. I would like to comment. Is now the time, or should we wait when we get closer to motion?
We'll go ahead and comment now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, one item on consent tonight is item H, which is Station 54. I would just want to call this out. This is really important to our community to have a sense of the impact of this. Yes, I understand this is only about a 17K adjustment and moves the date out to the end of 2022. But I want to use this opportunity to express what this journey has meant for our community and our first responders. I toured Station 54 before pandemic when I was on the Fire Commission, and Station 54 is in need of substantial upgrades. In phase 1, we saw major projects completed, including the Public Safety Center and Stations 52 and 57. But the community should be proud of its wisdom in 2013 to pass Measure E to ensure that our first responders have the tools and the quarters necessary to protect the community. So I just want to call that out. I know it's a pretty small item, but it is part of the journey, and I think the context is important.
Absolutely. No, it is important that we provide that context. Thank you so much. So if I don't see any other comments, I will open it up to the public and see if there's any input on any of the items A through H.
Thank you. If you're participating by telephone, please press *9. You can use the raise hand feature if you're participating on Zoom. And if you're watching on YouTube, please go ahead and submit your comments now, and please write public comment before your comments. And I'm going to give everyone about 15 seconds to do so. I see no public comment.
Thank you, City Clerk Lara. Okay, with that, I'll bring it back to the council. Request a motion for the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Bushy.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Urans-Galati.
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 5-0. Thank you. And as Councilmember Kurtz had alluded to, we have a special presentation from Director Mark Brown of the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. As we all know, we are so grateful to our voters for passing Measure C. Was that just last year? It seems like years ago, but enabled us to have a new tool to address wildfire prevention. So I will turn the floor over to you. Welcome, Director Brown.
Oh, thank you very much. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to your board. And so Mayor Kate, I really very much appreciate it. And council members, as mentioned, my name is Mark Brown, and I have the honor and privilege to be appointed as the executive officer of the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. I was hired at the Marin County Fire Department in 1991 and ended my career as a deputy fire chief so I can assume the position of executive officer for the MWPA. And through my 30 plus years of firefighting, I've seen the change in the wildfire environment. And I know that we must act now, and we need to act before the fires ever occur. It's been obvious for quite some time. And the 2020 fire season just put an exclamation point on it. And we must act in a holistic and coordinated fashion to increase the safety of the residents of Marin. And I feel the MWPA is poised just to do that. And we're all seeing the news about the extension or the worsening of the drought and the historic dry year that we're having. But quite frankly, it doesn't change our course right now, because with the conditions that we've experienced over the last 8 years, we entered into the MWPA with the maximum sense of urgency, and we really cannot increase that sense of urgency. I think it was our forward leaning and the foresight that our voters had to vote for this that really put us on the right path. If we hadn't already been there, we'd be that much further behind. But I will say that I think we need to evaluate changing our messaging to include some of the information about the drought. But when it comes to our work, we're already doing everything we can. We're so far behind with 110 years of fire suppression, climate change, pushing people further and further into the wildland. We have a lot to catch up. So I think we've already had that max sense of urgency. It's clear that we all must act together. Fire agencies, law enforcement agencies, local government, and land managers are environmental stakeholders. And I'll argue that the most important people that we need to bring on board is our community members. We need them to take responsibility for their own property. It's so easy to focus on the mega fires. That's what you hear in the news almost on a day-to-day basis during the summer, but they constitute really less than 1% of the fires that we experience here in the state of California. And I believe we need to focus on the 99% of the fires with a house-out approach. And the fortunate thing about that approach, though, is that if we are better prepared for the 99% of the fires, we are much better prepared for the 1% because we become, the strength of our community is the sum of its parts. And I'll give you an example why I believe this is the 3-acre regular vegetation fire that we have on a regular day in the summer can get to a home faster than a fire engine can get to a home. So if that home can defend itself without a fire engine under those conditions, then we have a much better chance of defending that home in the extreme conditions. We must focus on vegetation management projects in and around our communities, improve the safety of our evacuation routes so we can get people to a safe area. And we really need to increase the community awareness and improve our notification systems. And as I mentioned before, our residents really need to be active participants. When they're doing work around their home and they're hardening their home, it's not just about their home. It's about their home and their neighbor's home and not their entire community's home. Because if their house becomes involved in fire, then it becomes the major ember generator that makes other homes catch on fire. So if we can keep homes from catching on fire to begin with, then the rest of the community is so much safer. One of the things we've been doing with the MWPA is we have funding that is a pass-through funding that comes into the MWPA and then we pass it off straight to the local agencies. And the city of San Rafael has received nearly $1 million in funding per year for defensible space evaluations and for local mitigation projects. And they've been taking advantage of that. And Chief White can cover the local projects that have been going on for the city of San Rafael. But I'd like to take the opportunity to give a couple shout outs. In the development of the MWPA, City Manager Jim Schutz, Assistant City Manager Christine Halilovich, Chief Gray, and then now replaced by Chief White, have been phenomenal. They have provided leadership not just for the city of San Rafael, but for the entire county. And while I'm giving a few shout outs, Quinn Gardner's amazing. She does so much work for your city and the entire county. I just have to say how much I enjoy working with her. We've had a great start. The MWPA is really extending what agencies have already been doing. All our fire agencies before the MWPA were trying to accomplish what we've been doing now, but now we have the funding and we have the personnel to support that. We had a great round of chipper days. And if you go to the MWPA website, you can see the end of year report for chipper days. And we look at expanding, we're looking to expand those chipper days by 50% for 21-22. And our goal is that every community in Marin will receive 2 chipper days. So one day early in the vegetation management season, so to speak, and then a second one later on in the vegetation management season. Our public education has been wildly successful through Fire Safe Marin. And I want to mention that Fire Safe Marin is not being replaced by the MWPA. They're one of our major partners. And they are one of the first, if not the first, fire safe council in the state of California. I'm biased when I say this, but I think they're the best fire safe council in the state of California. And their public education has gone off the charts since we started this. They've had to update their account so they can get more viewers into their educational program. So we are really looking forward to continuing that partnership. We've expanded our notification systems through a NOAA weather radio system. NOAA weather radios are a VHF radio system that have been around for decades, and they work. They work during a PSPS, they work during a regular day, and we're integrating that with our Zone Haven product, which I'll talk a little bit later. And it's just one more tool for notifications, because we know that cell phone systems go down, landlines go down during a PSPS. These NOAA weather radios work all the time, especially with the battery backup. We've talked about increased awareness, and it's so important that our residents have a situational awareness when to know that there's a high fire danger day. So we have red flag signage that we've been working on so that the residents will know that this is a high fire danger day. They can be a little extra careful around their homes. They can have their go bags packed next to their doors. And maybe if they have family members that have access and functional needs, maybe they're leaning a little bit more towards their neighbor or family member that has access and functional needs. Or maybe someone who has access and functional needs decides, you know what, instead of waiting for the fire, maybe I'll go visit my family member in another community on this day. And then finally, I'll talk about evacuation. The recent grand jury report, followed up by articles in the IJA, talked about the need to improve our evacuation system. And MWPA has funded a program called Zone Haven, which is really going to increase our ability to coordinate evacuations, not just getting notifications out, but also to manage the traffic of people getting out of the area, which has been the weakness in our system that we've had. And what I do want to say about Zone Haven, it's not replacing anything that we've had in place. It is augmenting. So all of our notification systems, whether it's reverse 911 systems covered by Everbridge or the Amber Alert type system of wireless emergency alerts, it's not replacing those, it's augmenting it. And as we look forward to 21-22, the budget year of 21-22, we've had a great start in our planning. The proposals are coming to the Advisory Technical Committee on the 26th. The Centerville and Marinwood is their own geographical zone. We have 5 geographical zones within the MWPA. So Centerville and Marinwood have a very strong voice in what's happening with our core budget, as well as 100% of the voice in what's happening with the local mitigation dollars. Like I mentioned, we are increasing our chipper days, and we really look forward to an enhanced D-space evaluation program. Centerville has hired an excellent core of people to go out to do these D-space evaluations. They're using MWPA funds to pay for those inspectors and evaluators. And I think it's important for the residents to know that if they have any concerns, the one-stop shop is their local fire department. And that system works well because everyone has a connection to their local fire department, and they know that they are those subject matter experts for the local area. And with that, I'm open for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Director Brown. It is exciting to get that update. Again, this is something that we all recognize was needed, and to have you at the helm is fabulous and giving us an update. I'll start with the Vice Mayor, as she was part of, Centerville had done actually their own wildfire plan, so she's well versed in that. I don't know if you had any questions for Director Brown. Or I think Chief White is on standby too, if there's any questions that come up, because I know there's a lot of crossover between the two agencies.
Well, just a word to the wise, you're going to have to take a number to get in line to be a fan of Quinn, just so you know that. it's a long line. Could you talk a little bit more about some of the timelines for major projects that you envision? All this outreach and education is great, but we want to see some bulldozers moving.
Well, this last year, we actually had significant projects that were in place. Centerville was leading the way as far as using MWPA funds for grazing projects. And you mentioned bulldozers, and that means disturbing the earth. And anytime that we're going to disturb the earth, that means that we have to have environmental compliance. And so we are evaluating a request for proposals that we put out for environmental compliance firms. We are on track to award that contract in the middle of May, and that they will support our environmental compliance. and Chief White can talk about the local projects, the vegetation management projects that have already occurred in San Rafael. But with the 21-22 work plan, it'll get approved in July 1, and depending on the level of environmental compliance that is required, then that'll, if it's a notice of an exemption, then projects will start within 30 days beyond that. One of the things that I should have mentioned in my original report that I'm very excited about is offering low-income D-space work grants. So D-space grants, or excuse me, I'm fumbling my words here, I'm sorry. But some recommendations from our defensible space evaluators for a resident for work that needs to get done around their home. If the resident is low income, they can apply for a grant. And we are also looking forward to offering matching grants for home hardening. So let's say a resident is going to put towards, and we'll have a limit to what that home hardening matching grant would be, but let's say they're putting $5,000 towards a home hardening, we can match up to, say, $2,500. I'm not sure what that number is going to be yet. And I haven't seen the specific projects for the city of San Rafael, but most of the agencies are going for projects that will have a notice of exemption. And so we should be able to get a quick start on them.
Sounds great. Chief, do you have more to add?
Well, actually, Mark's done an excellent job as usual, summarizing mostly everything that's going on throughout the county. But I can just state that he's absolutely correct. Quinn has been doing an excellent, phenomenal job with trying to get our defensible space team up and going. We've just recently onboarded another 10 members with 2 more on the way. Retired Fire Chief Chris Gray is assisting with training those individuals with his subject matter expertise and background in vegetation management. We've got a whole host of things that we're looking to accomplish this year, which is an extension of all the great work we were able to do with the initial outlay of local and D-space funding that we received from the MWPA. And so our goals are to continue that effort, but expand tremendously, as you can imagine, with the availability of the core funding as an example. And so as a result, we're looking to be able to expand and create a lot more community risk reduction efforts, not just through hiring personnel, but also through our additional goat grazing efforts, roadside projects, open space projects, a variety of things throughout the community that we have targeted and prioritized as being the areas that we see are most in need of work right now. And then moving forward, our goal is to just be able to maintain that work, because we've done such an excellent job clearing out what we believe are the hazardous and riskiest areas. And then maintenance becomes that primary goal at some point. And so our start right now with getting as many defensible space inspectors in place is really designed to enhance the inspections that we were able to accomplish last year through some attrition that we had. We want to offset that and really get out and get eyes on all the parcels, continue our education efforts, and continue to look at options such as expanding of the Chipper Day program, but also using something called an air curtain burner that I'm very familiar with or should I say I'm very in favor of, and just getting familiar with as a resource that can actually assist us with reducing the fuel down to basically ash, and doing so in an environmentally conscious way. So with that, we've also reached out to a couple of individuals in the community who've expressed concerns about what methods our subject matter experts will be using to remove vegetation in a responsible manner, taking into consideration invasive species, sensitive species, soil erosion, and other concerns that may come from vegetation removal. And so with that, we've offered up the opportunity for them to come in and share their expertise with us so that we're making not only the best decision that we know, but also using the expertise and understanding that others who may have the time and interest in contributing. So it's a truly collaborative effort, but at the same time, comprehensive effort.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Councilmember Kurtz, I know that you are a representative on the MWPA, so maybe you have other questions, and all the council members have an opportunity to ask, but if there's anything you want to add or ask, we're so grateful that you do represent us. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to Chief White and to Director Brown on the work that's happening with MWPA. And Director, maybe you can provide a little bit of the background in terms of how the city is represented on the different levels of committees. And I think it's really important for people in the community to understand it's not just a funding body, but it's an active decision-making body that the city is actually participating in. And so maybe you could provide a little bit of context in terms of that. And I think one of the things that's really important, a lot of this is happening, these projects are happening while the organization's also getting established. And so this has been a really interesting for me to learn about this whole process and how, this is a long-term plan and it's a big organization with a lot of money. And to Vice Mayor's point, we want to see projects. And so it's, we have to balance that. So maybe if you could provide a little bit of background on the structure.
You bet. So at the top of our structure is the board of directors. Each member agency, which we have 17 of, has a seat on the board of directors, and they must be an elected official from that council or fire district. Then right below that is our operations committee, and each agency has a member on the operations committee. And we have a great blend of some of the agencies have put their fire chiefs in that operations committee seat. Some agencies have put their city manager, or with the CSDs, the community services districts, they have put their district manager in there. So we get a good balance of representation from city management and the fire chiefs. And then right below that is the advisory technical committee. And again, each member agency has one seat, although some agencies will share a member. And that's our technical and our subject matter expert staff. Most of those seats are occupied by fire agency personnel. Quinn Gardner is your representative for Centerville and the Marinwood CSD. But we also have public works directors or members of public works that are working in there. So we have a good representation. So the process is that the operations committee will set the broad goals for our main drive for our core budget. And then they task the advisory technical committee to get the nuts and bolts built into that. The advisory technical committee pushes it up to operations for their approval. And then final approval goes up to the board of directors. And to Councilmember Kirch's comment about we're getting work done while we are building the organization. I'm still the only full-time employee of the MWPA. And if it weren't for the great work of the operations committee, the board of directors, and the advisory technical committee, nothing would have happened. And we have spent close to $12 million on vegetation management projects while we were building the organization. And we are looking to spend the full $20 million of our budget next year.
Thank you. No, I think that's important to understand the structure. Councilmember Hill, previous fire commissioner.
Yes, thank you. No, in fact, I really appreciated all your comments so far, Director Brown. This is really great, as well as Chief White's comments, especially about environmental consideration on vegetation removal. That's extremely collaborative, and to his point, I can't remember the other word he used, but that's really great that you're already taking that on. My question is more, I think I know the answer to this, but more for the sake of community members to understand what chipper days are and how to participate. Can you elaborate a little bit more? I know you deal with it every day, but maybe for folks in the community want to understand how they can take advantage of this great service. I know, Director Brown, you had indicated that there are 2 opportunities probably coming up in this season, but what would a community member want to do if they want to take advantage of a chipper day?
And we are trying to make it as very easy as possible. So if when a DSpace evaluator goes to your home and says, we really recommend that you trim that tree, you trim those bushes back, well, there's material that needs to be removed. And the amount of material that often gets cut is more than your green waste can hold. And quite a few people have a challenge getting that material to some type of site that can receive it. So we are combining our DSpace evaluations with the opportunity for our evaluators to share the information about the DSpace and actually sign up for chipper days while they're getting their evaluation. But we're also messaging very thoroughly to all of our communities when those chipper days will occur. And after they do their DSpace work around their homes, all they have to do is simply stack it in front of their houses. We have a picture of how it should be stacked. And then a chipper truck comes by, picks it up, hauls it away. And we also feel that we are decreasing greenhouse gas emissions by doing this. Instead of having nearly 3,000 vehicles drive to the locations where we can dump this off, we have about 125 vehicles that are driving to the sites to drop this off. So we think it's a win-win.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Urens-Galati.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. It's definitely great to hear everything you're doing. And as the weather is so warm right now, so unusual, definitely. I'm having experienced an evacuation at the place where I work in Muir Beach. Is definitely really nice to hear that you are, working on that, and our, Chief White as well here in San Rafael. So when I'm thinking about evacuations and I think about places like the Canal District, with very restricted exits. Are you planning to have, I assume that there are some communities that is harder to evacuate than others. Are you looking into planning for those communities and also underserved communities where maybe they don't have the same resources that other communities in Marin County?
That ties into a request for proposals for a project that we're putting out right now. What we are, it's a first of its kind that we know of, not just in the state of California, but potentially nationwide. And that is an evacuation route risk assessment. And this risk assessment isn't just about the vegetation and the fire threat, but we're also looking at the population density and the demographics of that population. And it will give us, the problem with studies like that is that it's a snapshot in time, right? And it's only valid for the end of that study. So what we're asking for this study is that they create a tool that has a rating system that after we've done work in a particular community, we can go in and reassess and get a new rating. So it's no longer a static snapshot in time. And like I said, it's taking into account population density and the demographics. And it's going to give us the tools to truly evaluate how we can get those residents out safely, not just vegetation management, but then we can work with the Public Works Agency for that area that is working in there. Maybe there's some roadway improvements. We can work with public transit for people who do not have transportation to get out. So we're really looking forward to that risk assessment, and we should be pushing out that request for proposals sometime in May.
Thank you so much. And do you know how long, once you got the proposals, you know how long it takes the study and then implementing, some of the solutions?
We would imagine that the study will take probably 6 months, and then we start instituting some of our programs. So we are not waiting to do any of the work. One of our biggest focuses for this year is on evacuation routes, but we'll be using fire risk and our community wildfire protection plan and the parcel level risk assessment that came with it to prioritize what evacuation routes that we will be working on. And then this assessment will help us work with our partner agencies to refine and some of the work that other people can do besides just the MWPA.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We just have a few follow-up questions. You've answered, between you and Chief White, have answered quite a range of them. You had mentioned earlier that people could apply for grants for low-income folks to do some of the vegetation removal. Is that through MWPA or through our own fire department? So what does that look like? Kind of going to Councilmember Hill's question. We hear about chipper days, but how? For people watching, how would they go about that?
And I'll start off that answer with the observation that Director Kurtz had, or the council member. It's Director Kurtz when I'm talking to her here at MWPA, council member here. We're still building the organization as we are trying to take action. So the application has still not been created for the MWPA. I imagine that we will follow the housing and urban development low income standards, which are for the Bay Area are pretty high levels of income, which we think is a great thing for the residents. And there's two ways. We have our core budget, which is the MWPA funds, and then we have the local mitigation budgets. And some of the agencies have been using their local mitigation monies for grants. And then last year, the MWPA did not offer budgets that we would administer or grants that we would administer. This year, we plan on having grants that we can administer. So it most likely will be through the MWPA. It's just we're still working out the mechanics of that. That being said, we are applying for a CAL FIRE fire protection grant that would help to fund our low income defensible space grant so that we can even increase our budget even more. We hope to be able to start leveraging grants that the taxpayers start seeing a return on their investment. For every dollar that they put into the MWPA, maybe we can reach out and get 50 cents, maybe even up to $1 worth of grants.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. We support that, the leveraging dollars. I mean, exactly. I think that's one reason that taxpayers are willing to tax themselves is that there can be dollars that can be leveraged.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about the MWPA, it is both the funding part as we've been talking about, but there's also this overall prioritization county-wide approach. We all recognize fire knows no boundaries. Could you speak to how do you do the prioritization across the county, knowing that we all have different risks depending on what community we're in? Could you just speak to that?
Well, our foundation for that is our Community Wildfire Protection Plan, which was finalized at the end of 2020 and adopted in 2021. And we have state-of-the-art risk assessment, partial level risk assessment that's been conducted. The Marin County Fire Department reached out for a federal grant back in 2019 for LIDAR evaluation of our fuels, and we've been working with the Golden Gate National Recreation Conservancy to turn that data into consumable information for fire professionals and for the regular citizens on the street. And we've created like I said, a partial level risk assessment. And if you go to Marin Map, we were able to upload all the layers in the Marin Map. And Marin Map's been a great partner. They've added a layer just for the MWPA. And you can add MWPA to the layers of what you want to see and then hit risk assessment. And you'll see different color codes for that risk. And so our projects will be driven by that. The areas that are at the greatest risk based on our scientific analysis will be the areas that get their work first. There is a clause within MWPA for our core budgeting, which is 60% of our budget, that 80% of the funds that have been gained from a geographical area must be spent in that geographical area with a 5-year average. And what that means is that residents of one area of the county won't be super funding residents of another area of a county. So for the most part, the monies are staying locally. And like you said, wildfire knows no boundaries, but I think the way we have set it up, each of our 5 geographical areas will get significant work done, and then the county as a whole will be safer.
Wonderful. And I think the fact that you have such a large board, there are a lot of voices in the room, and I know that there's a discussion to make sure that it is addressed appropriately, for maximum benefit. So before we let you go, we will open this up to public comment. There might be members of the public who have been listening and have additional questions. So I'll turn it over to City Clerk Lara.
Thank you, Mayor Kate. If you're participating by telephone, you can press *9 now. If you're participating through Zoom, you can use the raise hand feature. And if you're on YouTube, go ahead and submit your comments and write public comment in advance. You have a speaker.
Thank you.
I will set my timer for 2 minutes and I'll hold up when there's a 10-second warning. I'll hold my phone up.
Okay.
We're ready for you.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
L. Cole. And I am just delighted to be present at this meeting of our City Council. And I just really wanted to just give a word of support and congratulations for the work that Mark Brown has done. I work with the Ecologically Sound Practices Partnership, which is an integral part of the MWPA. And we work on best practices in defensible space, vegetation management, and climate. And it is very well received. And I just really wanted to say that the kind of presentation he gave, I I hope he gives all over the county, because a lot of people really don't understand how this works. And there's a lot of, in what I've seen by participating in various meetings, listening in, is that it's a very innovative process to see how people create something when they know what the structure is, but they have to do it. And I think that that Mark has made a lot of this possible, and so I'm very supportive of what he's doing. And I think that we've been able to bring together large numbers of people in the environmental community and elsewhere, from San Rafael and elsewhere, to help guide whatever decisions are made about vegetation management and best practices. And the other thing I just wanted to say is that I'm on the Fire Council for Dominican San Rafael. Dominican Black Canyon. And I wanted to say that on the subject of chipper days, if these councils can answer a lot of your questions about chipper days, because these are local. And so I just wanted to offer up these wildfire councils as places to go to get answers about anything that you're dealing with on those subjects. So mainly I just wanted to congratulate and support Mark and what he's doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Belle, and thank you for your leadership around the ecological perspective. That's very much appreciated. Thank you.
And that concludes public comment.
Okay. I guess it was a public hearing, but I'll bring it back to the council for any additional comments or questions. And I'll start off by just thanking you for being here and putting another shout out for Firewise communities. You talked about that with Fire Safe Marin, but that is something that the city of San Rafael is really interested in. I know Chief White and his team have done a lot towards that. When you talk about home hardening, it's like, well, how do I do that? You start a Firewise neighborhood like we have in our neighborhood. And I have learned so much. And now I have the little vents that are the little wire that's underneath my house vents. I didn't have that until I became a member of the Firewise. So anything that the MWPA can continue to do to get the word out, I think that is how we'll start to home harden as a community versus as individuals. So are there any other comments? Councilmember Kurtz, before we let Director Brown go, do you have any other comments?
No, I'd just like to also thank you and the whole group working with everyone together. I mean, it's a large number of people trying to get decisions made. So thank you to Mark and his leadership, and to Chief White and to Quinn. Really have made the difference in what's happening for San Rafael. And I'd like to encourage anyone in the community who's interested in learning more to visit the website. All the meetings are open and public. There's lots and lots of information between MWPA and Fire Safe Marin. You'll get lots of information, and contact us if there are questions, because it is confusing with all the different players right now and what's happening, but it's all for the right thing. And if Mark's going to make rain to that, somebody asked me, it's like, can you solve the drought? So that would be good. Said probably not in the cards this year, but maybe next. So, but thank you. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Councilmember. And we'll let Chief White, who leads us, do you have any other last words or comments on this item?
I'd just like to echo the thanks and appreciation for Director Brown and all that he's done to assist the Ops Committee and assist San Rafael, Marinwood, and everyone else who's been reaching out to him. I don't envy the situation he's in. He's being pulled in 1,000 directions simultaneously, and he's handling this with grace, and he's very responsive. And for that, I really appreciate that, and look forward to continuing our collaboration moving forward. And thanks again.
Thank you. Well, with that, Director Brown, we will let you get back to your evening. Thank you so much for coming and presenting to us. This is recorded, so hey, as Belle Cole said, anyone can go back and review it and learn more. So thank you so much, and we look forward to future updates.
My pleasure, and happy to provide any future updates. Have a great evening.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, our next agenda item, and I see Director Bill Guerin has joined us. We have a transit center update. It's an update from the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District regarding the new downtown San Rafael Transit Center. And as I call the agenda item, before I turn it over to Director Guerin, I get Councilmember Hill. Did you have a comment that you were going to make prior to this item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Kate. So I've analyzed whether or not I have a conflict of interest arising from my father's position on the board, and I have concluded that there is none. I have discussed this matter with our city attorney. He has indicated that he agrees with that, but if City Attorney Epstein, if you're on, if you'd like to make a comment, otherwise I want to make sure I called that out.
Certainly, thank you, Councilmember Hill. And I can confirm that you and I did discuss the fact of your dad's connection with the Bridge District and the fact that that did not present a legal conflict under the Political Reform Act or otherwise. And the question for every council member on any matter is whether the council member can make a decision free from any prejudgment or bias, and that can be caused by anything really, but rarely arises. And here we talked about that possibility too, and you made clear that you are prepared to participate in this matter free from any prejudgment, bias, or otherwise. And therefore, we're glad to have you participate for the vote and the discussion beforehand.
Right. Thank you. And thank you, City Attorney. And actually, this evening, we're receiving a report. So that is any sort of voting. There's no other voting going on. It's mostly an update. With that,
I should have said when there eventually is a vote, which someday will happen, presumably. I didn't necessarily mean tonight.
Yeah. Yes. A lot more public comment coming in. Okay. We will turn it over to Director Guerin. Thank you so much. The dais is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Kate and Council. I am Bill Guerin with the Public Works Department. Tonight, we are presenting the options for the Transit Center. There are 3 different options that Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District are going to go through in some detail. We had an opportunity to see the presentation, and you'll find that there is a lot of detail in this report. There is no decision needed tonight. We're simply looking for your feedback and any information that you want to provide to us regarding the report. Golden Gate Transit is moving very soon to a place where they will make a decision about their preferred alternative for their environmental analysis. And they're presenting to a number of different agencies with the intention of getting as much feedback as they can in order to make a considered decision about what the preferred alternative in the draft EIR is going to be. With us tonight is Dennis Mulligan, the director of Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District. With him is Ray Santiago. He's the planning head for this project. He's been on this for a number of years, has presented a couple times to the council. So all these will be familiar faces to the public and to a number of the council members as well. Adam Dankberg is with Kimley Horn. He is the project manager leading the effort for Golden Gate Bridge District to pull this environmental analysis together. So he'll be, I think, doing the bulk of the presentation. I just want to point out that myself, Paul Jensen, the Community Development Director, and Rafat Ray, the Deputy Public Works Director and our traffic expert, are all here tonight to answer any questions that you might have of us. So with that, I'd like to give the floor to Golden Gate Bridge Transportation and Highway District and let them do their presentation.
Thank you so much. Hi, Adam.
Hi. Thank you for having us here tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with council. We have a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation. Is that queued up for us?
I will find out. City Clerk Lara, I don't know if you did a screen sharing or we will figure that out.
Yeah, I believe that you'll be using the share screen function.
Okay, great. Sounds good. I will get that going here. Okay. Bear with me 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Can I get a video confirmation? We're good? Okay, thank you. All right. So I'm Adam Dankberg with Kimley Horn Associates. I'm serving as the project manager for the consultant team supporting the Bridge District on this project. And thank you again for your time this evening. I have a presentation that will cover the current state of the project and all the work that we've been doing since the last time we were here to council, which I think may have been some time ago. There's a lot of detail, as Bill mentioned, so please bear with me and certainly look forward to answering any questions that come up. Let's see. So to start off in terms of where we're at in the project, we began this project a couple of years ago before the pandemic. The initial effort was sort of a next steps out of the San Rafael Transit Center relocation study that was led by the city. But at the start of this project, we decided to start over in terms of identifying alternatives and had an extensive public process through 2018 where we identified alternatives to evaluate and further analyze. Since that time, we've been hard at work at analyzing and screening down the number of alternatives. We've been completing the California Environmental Quality Act environmental analysis, the CEQA analysis. And so as Bill mentioned, we're getting close to having that ready for release. We anticipate releasing that here in the next couple months, and we'll have extensive outreach associated with release of that document. We hope to have the EIR adopted by the end of 2021, at which point the project would proceed into preliminary engineering. Subsequent project steps include final design and construction, so there's still a ways to go before it would be implemented. We're estimating in the roughly 4 to 7 year timeframe. In terms of immediate next steps, we have a little parade in terms of presentations to various councils and boards, and appreciate the opportunities that all those boards have offered us. All these presentations are merely project updates similar to tonight. And the next project milestone is in terms of the Golden Gate Board of Directors selecting a preferred alternative for inclusion in the draft EIR. So that is not an adoption of the project or approval of the project. That is the identification of preferred alternative for the EIR, the draft EIR. So the draft would be released in June with a 45-day circulation period. And then the goal would be to come back to the board in December for that final certification. This presents that information in graphical format. Again, we're currently in the update stage with the May identification of the preferred alternative for the purposes of the draft EIR, followed by preparation of the final EIR after the public comment period. In terms of, for folks who are newer to the project or could use a refresher, there's a number of contributing factors in terms of why a new transit center is needed. When SMART was extended to Larkspur, the SMART tracks extended through the middle of the transit center, which bifurcated the transit center into two distinct portions. This impacted the number of bus bays and accessibility of those bus bays within the transit center. It made transfers from one bus bay to another more difficult as there's no crossings of the SMART tracks within the site. All the access is at the perimeter of the site. The additions of the rail crossings made buses getting out onto 2nd and 3rd more challenging, particularly onto 2nd Street, which has impacted bus circulation into and out of the transit center. In addition, the transit center is starting to age a bit. It was built about 30 years ago and can use an update in terms of technology, customer service facilities, sustainability features. Early on in the process, there was some consideration for revising the site or basically redoing the current site where it's at. A number of these constraints that are noted here on the slide would still be present even with a overhaul of the existing site, as well as the additional challenge of where to relocate the bus bays during the construction, multi-year construction period. We've also gotten a number of questions as we've gone through a public outreach process in the last few months about COVID and the implications of COVID on this project. So a few highlights. One is that while some transit service has been affected due to additional service being added to allow for social distancing on routes, there's continued to be over 500 bus trips a day through the transit center. All the routes are actually have been continued to be operated. And actually some of the airport services that were suspended are now resuming. So there's been continued strong levels of service provided at the transit center. We see ridership starting to tick back up. And ridership has really remained strong for the local and interregional transit services, particularly the Marin transit routes. because many of their riders are essential workers who have continued to use transit to access their jobs as well as other necessary services around town. And so while many folks have been able to work from home, many others have not, and the Transit Center has continued to provide vital services to those individuals. We also did want to note some of the demographics for users of routes that operate through the Transit Center. The Transit Center is noted to serve predominantly or a larger lower income or minority populations than those of the broader population in the city and county. We were provided a number of great reference documents and guidance documents by the city and other organizations through this process. I did specifically want to highlight some of the previous work and around the relocation study, the bicycle pedestrian master plan, and the city's Santa Fe Transit Center relocation guidance report is having some important information that has been incorporated into the project process. We've also been staying abreast of the city's general plan update and downtown precise plan, and have incorporated those draft documents and recommendations in throughout as well. In terms of the new transit center, the goal would be to provide 17 bus bays, which is actually the same number that exists at the transit center today. However, as I mentioned, the transit center's current configuration was impacted with the smart extension. And so there's limitations on what buses can serve what bays and how they can circulate. So the goal with the new transit center is to be able to provide greater flexibility in bus operations, which would therefore really increase the overall capacity of the transit center without increasing its overall footprint. There's a number of other key attributes of the transit center that would be incorporated in, including bike parking, improved customer service, improved wayfinding for riders, providing pickup drop-off space, shuttle space for a lot of the new transit services that are being deployed, in particular by Marin Transit, and really making sure that the transit center is a safe and comfortable facility for its users. We're still very early in the process of developing the transit center. We're really focused right now on site selection, but there's certainly a lot of interest into the overall visual aesthetic, and those two can't be fully separated. So this is a slide that we presented to the community back in November, showing some ideas of what the transit center could ultimately look like. The design, the aesthetic design of the transit center would really be an effort as part of the subsequent phase of the project, and would certainly incorporate extensive community engagement. So this is sort of just a taste of some of the things we're thinking. Don't necessarily think the current transit center in terms of what this will look like. There's a lot of opportunities for upgraded amenities and facilities and aesthetic beyond what's there today. As part of the survey that I'll talk about a little later in the presentation, we did ask members of the public what type of aesthetic or feel for the transit center they would prefer. And we had a few different options, and the mission style, which is one adaptation of that is depicted in this slide here, was the one that was by far the most popular amongst respondents. So I just want to show this as an indication of potential configuration for the shelters with this transit center. As I mentioned, a lot more work will be done in terms of how to integrate this transit center with the surrounding environment. One thing I want to highlight before jumping into each of the alternatives is some consistency across all the alternatives. So all the alternatives provide improved accessibility for bus routes. Right now, the way the transit center is located, because it has one-way streets on 2nd, 3rd, and Heatherton on 3 of its 4 sides, it's really challenging for buses to access on the appropriate bus bays. So a lot of buses have to circulate Heatherton and Irwin, 2nd and 3rd, through that really congested interchange area in order to get in the right spot. And so all these alternatives really streamline bus routing, which reduces the amount of bus circulation on local streets, benefiting congestion, greenhouse gas emissions, and other benefits as well. All the build alternatives provide greater operational flexibility for future changes in service pattern, whether it be different size buses or different types of bus routes. All of them would include various amenities, as I highlighted earlier, including green treatments, improved waiting areas, and technology incorporation, as well as adaptation for emerging transit amenities such as microtransit shuttles, TNCs, which are Uber and Lyft, taxis, and pickup drop-off. Okay, we have 3 alternatives that have been, basically 3 alternatives that have been analyzed thus far, and they're all located in a close proximity. We have a lot of information that was previously provided back in 2018 as far as why the transit center needs to be in this location. We put a lot of that material up on the project website as well if folks are interested in analyzing further. But really the 3 alternatives under consideration are all located in a very close proximity to the current transit center. I'll cover these three alternatives in alphabetical order, starting with the 4th Street Gateway alternative. So this alternative is shown here on the screen. To orient folks, north is to the right. So towards Civic Center is kind of the right side of the screen. The southbound 101 viaduct is at the southern part of the screen, running left to right. And the whistle stop block is kind of in the middle upper left of the screen in the blue building. So with this alternative, buses would access the bus bays via 3rd, 4th, and Heatherton Streets. There would be a new customer service building located near the corner of 3rd and Heatherton Street. And roughly half the bus bays would be located adjacent to Smart, and the other half would be located north of 4th Street. There would be a few bus bays along Heatherton Street in a similar configuration to the current transit center. But in order to place those bus bays there, it precludes the ability for vehicles to turn right from Heatherton to 4th Street. So those vehicles would instead be rerouted to 3rd or to 5th. This now covers some of the passenger experience considerations with a couple renderings. The image in the lower left is the intersection of 4th and Heatherton, looking southwest. There's an opportunity for a new public plaza there. You can kind of see in the distance, there's a Smart train in the background there. So you can kind of orient yourself. So there's a new opportunity for a public plaza gateway features with this alternative. The image in the lower right is roughly Heatherton and 3rd Street looking northwest. And you can see the whistle stop building in the background behind an example shelter configuration. In terms of summarizing some of the passenger experience implications, this alternative provides convenient access to downtown Santa Fe as it straddles 4th Street, which is the main downtown corridor. But it would require passengers who are transferring between some bus routes to actually have to cross 4th Street to get from one bus to another. It does provide a convenient connection to Smart for most users, and it creates a strong sense of place with public plazas, aesthetic treatments, and clear lines of sight. We've run for all the alternatives a very comprehensive and detailed simulation model that includes autos, buses, bikes, pedestrians, trucks, all integrated in the model throughout downtown Santa Fe. And so that allows us to understand the implications on traffic circulation, on transit circulation, on congestion, on traffic delay, on bus routing reliability, a number of metrics with each of these alternatives. And so I'll provide a brief snapshot of the findings of that for each of the alternatives. So for the 4th Street Gateway alternative, it does, as I note, remove the southbound right turn to 4th Street. As a result, it redistributes the traffic, making that movement to 3rd or to 5th. And so as a result, there's a small to moderate increase in delay per vehicle, particularly out to 2040 as year 2040, as traffic volumes continue to increase in the future. There is some benefit in the PM peak period to bus routing just by relocating the bus routes to the new transit center. However, as background traffic increases and associated with the removal of that right turn, the bus travel time in the morning peak period would actually increase with this alternative. A number of other considerations I'll highlight for each of the alternatives. For this one, there would be a number of new driveways as buses get in and out of the transit center on 4th Street. We note that 4th Street is a primary pedestrian corridor into downtown. There is an overlap with an opportunity site, a development opportunity site in the city station area plan. I did highlight some of the gateway features incorporated in. There are two Queen Anne Victorian style buildings located on 5th Avenue within the boundaries of the site. And these buildings would be affected, and we have identified they're potentially historic. And then we have identified the estimated total cost of the project development. Next alternative is under the freeway. So this alternative, again, similar orientation, north to the right towards Civic Center. In this case, the viaducts are running left to right across the middle of the page. The southbound viaduct is the upper one towards the top of the page. The northbound viaduct for Highway 101 is running in the middle of the page. So with this alternative, roughly half of the bus bays would be located immediately beneath the two viaducts, and about half the bus bays would be located east of the viaducts. In this case, the transit center will extend all the way from Heatherton Street to Irwin Street. In order to provide access for the buses to get to the transit center, buses would enter. Some of the buses would enter from Heatherton Street via a series of new bridges over Irwin Creek. So 3 new bridges would be constructed to access the bus bays over Irwin Creek. And buses would then circulate internally be able to exit or either enter or exit from either Irwin or Heatherton Street. Some of the bus bays would be located south of 4th Street and some would be located north of 4th Street. A new Transit Center customer service building would be provided in the northwest corner of 4th and Irwin. In terms of the passenger experience, the renderings depict what this Transit Center could look like. On the lower left is a view from the corner of Irwin and 4th, looking to the west-northwest. You can see the viaducts sort of in the background of that image. There's a little truck on top of one of the viaducts there. You can see there's an opportunity for a canopy structure east of the viaduct to provide some additional shade and protection from the noise and debris associated with the 101 overcrossing. The image in the lower right depicts what it could look like underneath the viaducts themselves. This is underneath the southbound 101 viaduct. Due to Caltrans policy restrictions, there's a limitation in terms of what amenities could actually be provided beneath the viaducts. There's really a limitation into the types of permanent structures there. So it'd be limited to things like signage in that area. And so there's less opportunity for nicer amenities and facilities for passengers in this area. Also, there's quite a number of columns, particularly beneath the southbound viaduct, which is the older structure. And so these columns would impact some of the visibility of the site. And visibility is a key component to safety and crime prevention. A couple other notes in terms of passenger experience. Passengers traveling to downtown Santa Fe and Bio Marin would, of course, now have to cross Heatherton Street, which they don't have to today or when in the other alternatives. However, a number of the passengers do actually access to and from Santa Fe High School in this alternative places at the Transit Center a bit closer to the high school. Some passengers would have to transfer across 4th Street to get between buses, as buses would be on both sides of the street. And all passengers going to and from SMART would have to cross Heatherton Street, and most passengers would also have to cross 4th Street in order to connect between SMART and the bus bays. In terms of the effects on traffic operations, there would be a number of new driveways on Heatherton Street, Irwin Street, and a couple of driveways on 4th Street. But those would be the only changes in the circulation network. By shifting the buses away from the current location, there would be a small to moderate decrease in delay per vehicle. And there would be moderate to significant benefits in bus travel time and reliability by placing the Transit Center in this location. A few other considerations. There is an opportunity site identifying the station area plan that would be encumbered by this proposed alternative. The space underneath the freeway is currently a Caltrans park and ride lot, and at least 72 spaces would be impacted, and they would need to be required to be replaced one for one by Caltrans. We haven't identified exactly where they would be replaced, but it needs to be in a similar area. Also of note is that Caltrans, as the owner of the property and as the owner of the 101 viaducts, would retain ownership of this property. Golden Gate would seek to pursue a ground lease of the property for compensation. Caltrans would then retain the right to evict Golden Gate Transit without any compensation if repairs are necessary to 101, in which case transit would have to be relocated to some undetermined location while those repairs are being made. So Caltrans would retain this right with this alternative. A few other notes: it would require parts of Irwin Creek to be covered, which would trigger some temporary and permanent environmental impacts and require a number of additional permits. And there is a potentially historic property on Irwin Street that would be affected by the project footprint, similar to the Queen Anne's mentioned for 4th Street Gateway. The cost for this alternative is higher, associated with the additional mitigation and construction of the bridges over Irwin Creek, as well as the replacement of the Caltrans Park and Ride and other property acquisition associated with this alternative. Okay, and then the final alternative is the whistle stop block alternative. And this one has a variant that I'll cover at the end of this alternative. Similar orientation here, north to the right, just off the bottom of the screen is the 101 viaducts. Kind of the bottom of the screen is Heatherton Street. The whistle stop building is located roughly in the middle of the screen. So with this alternative, it would extend between Heatherton Street and Tamalpais Avenue. The whistle stop building would be converted to a customer service facility by Golden Gate Transit. Golden Gate would not need the operation of the full building, and so some modification to the existing building would likely be appropriate to retrofit the building to meet current codes, as well as to align it with the customer service needs of Golden Gate Transit. Tamalpais Avenue would be converted to bus only in this case. It would be a two-way street, but be bus only with bus bays on both sides of Tamalpais Avenue. And the sidewalks in Tamalpais would be widened. In addition, there would be a two-way class 4 raised cycle track that would be provided on the west side of Tamalpais Avenue. And it's a little hard to see on this image, but that two-way cycle track would extend from 4th all the way down to 2nd Street. And that strong north-south bicycle connection is a key component of the city's bicycle and pedestrian master plan. And so that would be included in the project description here. Bus bays would be accessed via 3rd and 4th Street in this alternative. And I mentioned the Golden Gate customer service location would be in the Whistle Stop building. In terms of passenger experience, the rendering in the lower left depicts a view from the corner of Tamalpais and 4th Street looking southeast. You can see the Whistle Stop building peeking out behind the tree there. And there's an opportunity for a large public plaza in this area, and that is a key component of the station area plan that was adopted by the city a number of years ago. In the lower right is the view from Heatherton and 3rd Street looking northwest. And again, you can see the Whistle Stop building in the background there, and then the near side bus bays in this image. In terms of the passenger experience for users, it does not require passengers to cross any auto streets for transfers between any bus route or between buses and SMART. That allows for the creation of cohesive transit identity, which greatly simplifies wayfinding and sense of place for users. It creates there's opportunities for public plazas and aesthetic treatments and strong lines of sight for users. I'll talk about some of the benefits in terms of benefits or trade-offs associated with this Whistle Stop building when I discuss the variant. In terms of effects on operations, there is Tamalpais Avenue would be converted to bus only. So the limited number of vehicles that are currently going north-south on Tamalpais Avenue would need to be rerouted to other streets. If desired, this does allow for the provision of a second right turn lane from Heatherton Street to 3rd Street. The net effect is a small decrease in delay per vehicle associated with this alternative. There would be significant benefits to bus travel time and reliability associated with improved bus routing, and as well as the ability for some bus routes to remain west of the SMART tracks and not actually have to cross the SMART tracks if they're just going to and from the west. In terms of other considerations, I mentioned the bike connection on the west side of Tamalpais Avenue that would connect the Puerto Suelo and the Mahone Creek paths. There is a small portion of this alternative that overlaps with an opportunity site in the city station area plan. It does impact the fewest number of active businesses amongst the build alternatives. I'll also note that there are some new driveways or a couple new driveways for buses on the south side of 4th Street between Heatherton and the SMART tracks. And again, 4th Street is a primary pedestrian corridor. It does create an opportunity to reuse the existing Whistle Stop building for transit functions. And we understand the community's passion for the Whistle Stop building. And so this allows it to be used for transit services. But as I noted, the building does require upgrades and would likely not require the use of the entire building. And then the cost is noted here as well. There is one variant, as I alluded to. So with this variant, it's the same configuration east of the SMART tracks, but Tamalpais Avenue and the Whistle Stop building would be flipped west of the SMART tracks. And so that's shown here in this alternative. So you can see here now Tamalpais Avenue is adjacent to the SMART tracks, and the Whistle Stop building is west of Tamalpais Avenue. So essentially those two switch places. What this allows for is a more direct linear alignment of Tamalpais Avenue, connecting between 2nd and points north on 4th. That provides benefits for that bicycle and pedestrian facility on the west side of Tamalpais Avenue, creating a more linear connection there. There's a number of other benefits associated with the variant. By moving the Whistle Stop building to the western perimeter of the site, it allows for better line of sight between all the bus bays and the SMART tracks in the transit center, creating a more cohesive and compact area for bus bays. It also allows the building to serve as the visual transition from the transportation uses associated with 101 and Heatherton and the bus bays to downtown core of San Rafael. So it's that natural transition point from the transportation uses to the buildings, and provides a really aesthetically pleasing structure as the entryway to the downtown core along 4th Street. It emphasized the more distinctive east side of the Whistle Stop building. As I mentioned, the alignment of Tamalpais Avenue, as well. It creates space on the west side of Tamalpais Avenue for additional urban design treatments and sense of place treatments. It has the same project footprint. There's no significant change in terms of how it would operate. The cost is only slightly higher. This would be associated with moving the building and reconstructing the roadway. There are some potential cost savings along the way, so it's the net effect is a small increase in cost relative to the base alternative. So just wrapping up the various alternatives here, comparison of cost, comparison of impacts to existing uses, as well as a couple of the initial environmental considerations that we have identified. We'll be further fleshing out these environmental considerations as part of the draft environmental impact report. I did, before closing the presentation, I did want to highlight some of the outreach activities that we provided or that we conducted in late 2021. This is a continuation of the outreach that we started back in early of 2018. And we're not done yet. We'll have another round of outreach coming up here in the coming months. We really wanted to focus on the outreach that we conducted in November and subsequently in 2020. We enjoyed the partnership with the Canal Alliance, who was a great partner for this project. They hosted a Facebook Live event that was entirely in Spanish on November 9th. They then posted, with the Facebook Live event, it was posted on their Facebook feed, and it actually got 4,800 views, which is absolutely fantastic, and thank the Canal Alliance for their support. We also conducted 32 hours of bilingual outreach activities at the transit center and the food pantry to make transit users and other canal residents aware of this project and to get their input on the project and the various alternatives. We held a community meeting via Zoom also in November that had 50 attendees, live attendees, plus over 120 additional online views. We outreached through businesses via the Chamber and the Business Improvement District, various emails, blasts. There's a presentation to the Santa Fe High School English Learner Advisory Committee, which had great attendance. Presentations as well to Santa Fe Heritage, Chamber of Commerce, League of Women Voters, the Golden Gate Bus Passenger Advisory Committee, as well as, not noted here, but leadership amongst the canal. We conducted an online survey to gather and document community input through this process and received over 1,000 online surveys. The majority of those surveys were in English, but we did receive a number of Spanish language surveys as well. One thing to note that was interesting amongst the survey responses is that among these Spanish language survey responses, 89% of the respondents were transit users, whereas amongst the English language responses, only 68% were drivers. And so there's definitely a difference between the types of respondents that responded to the survey. And I will really want to emphasize that the survey was self-selected survey. We went out to the transit center and we intercepted folks and we blasted the survey via email and social media and online, but really it's up to the individual on whether they wanted to respond. So this is by no means a scientifically significant survey, nor is it fully representative of all the different demographics of Santa Fe. There's a few key conclusions that we gained from the survey, particularly amongst the Spanish language respondents. There's widespread support for all the alternatives, and there was not a notable difference between the alternatives amongst those respondents. Our interpretation was that this meant that there was a lot of enthusiasm for doing the project in general amongst the respondents, and that they saw great improvement relative to existing conditions, but weren't able to differentiate amongst the alternatives. We know that non-transit riders were much more likely to support under the freeway alternative than transit riders, but transit riders did most strongly support the whistle stop alternative. One common theme was that both English-speaking transit riders and non-transit riders had the least favorable opinion of the 4th Street Gateway alternative. So just throwing this slide up again, we're here to provide an update to the council, and we'll be providing a similar update to these other boards. Marching ahead towards a planned May 20th Transportation Committee and May 21st Board of Directors presentation, where we would like to get direction on the preferred alternative to include in the draft EIR. We plan on releasing the draft EIR in June, followed by a community engagement period and review period. Looking forward to an end of year adoption of the EIR. And so with that concludes the presentation. And again, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you for making the rounds. I saw on that last slide that I actually will hear this presentation 2 more times as the president of Marin Transit and as San Rafael's representative on TAMS. I mean, we can do a little, code because I will have it memorized by then. So what we'd like to do, I was gonna say, stop sharing your screen. Maybe we'll ask you to pull it back up if council members have questions. And again, you started out by saying it's been a while since you've come and given an update, and a lot has changed in our world. So what we'll do is go around and I'll give the opportunity for each member of the council to ask questions, and then we'll have the public ask questions or weigh in, and really appreciate your ability to help us out and really understand these proposed projects. So I'll start with Vice Mayor Bushy, and I know she's been here and heard it before, and was as part of the group actually with the former mayor that was meeting with SMART and Golden Gate and Marin Transit. So you've had a long history. So,
well, and thank you. Although most of my questions focus on the new part to this presentation. Adam, I heard you say that there are 500 bus trips into the transit center, and that's the way it's always been. That was the status quo, and that's what you're envisioning for the future. Is that right?
If I could jump in, actually, my name's Dennis Mulligan. I'm with the Bridge District. Today, there was actually 830 bus trips. In the COVID world, Marin Transit has had to add service. Golden Gate's cut a little bit of service. But on weekdays, currently, there are 830 bus trips stopping at the transit center to let people get on and off the bus as they travel to work, to school, or to medical appointments.
That's fantastic. What I'd like to know, though, is why did you choose bus trips instead of passengers?
Before COVID, at this phase, we're doing preliminary outreach. The draft environmental document will provide a lot of detail. But before COVID, 9,000 times a day, someone got on or off a bus at the San Rafael Transit Center. And today that number's down. It's probably about half the prior amount because a lot of people are doing what our local and state public health officials are telling us to do, and that is to shelter in place. And so until there's a broad reopening of the economy, most people in Marin that can work from home are working from home. And so that affects a lot of the trips that we would see on the transit system in Marin County.
So ridership is down by half, yet your plan ignores that fact. Is that a fair statement?
No, it's not a fair statement because we're not planning a transit center to operate 30 days from now. We envision that over the next year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, that Marin County, the Bay Area, in order to reach our greenhouse gas emission goals, as the economy continues to grow, will want to see an increase in transit trips so that we can enjoy economic vitality while achieving greenhouse gas emissions and reducing congestion on our roads. So we do not think that the current status of 4th Street in San Rafael for businesses or Marin Transit, Golden Gate Transit bus ridership reflects what we'll see a year from now, 3 years from now, or 5 years from now.
And do you have any studies that support those conclusions or show how that will come to pass?
There's a lot of conjecture out there. The honest answer is until the economy broadly reopens, until everyone's vaccinated, there's a lot of uncertainty with respect to what different types of employment will look like. But a lot of the people that travel through the transit center today are primarily low-income workers who do not have the pleasure or the opportunity to participate in work via Zoom or other means, and they have to go to a physical work location, and we do accommodate those. With respect to office buildings, plans are being released in downtown San Francisco. We do have access to data from the Bay Area Council and EMV with respect to what the plans are for reopening. And we'll be polling our customers to find out what that new hybrid reopening will look like, how many days a week people will go back. But initially, even when downtown San Francisco fully reopens, we think there'll be less commute traffic going into San Francisco. But we don't think that traffic ever goes away for very long. And we think having a robust transit system in Marin County is vital. Like I said, for economic vitality and also for us to achieve our greenhouse gas emission goals. If we don't really reduce vehicle miles traveled, we will be unsuccessful in dealing with the climate emergency that confronts us.
And doesn't work from home have the ultimate greenhouse gas reduction for transportation?
It does. And for many people, that's an opportunity that they'll have, and that's something they'll work out between them and their employer. But we're not designing a transit center for the midst of a pandemic, just like you wouldn't design any other facility for a temporary bump in the road. We do believe that people wish to get out and about. Plus, a lot of the people that use the transit center, it's not just for work, it's for school, it's for going to medical appointments, it's to see family and friends. And we think it plays a vital role in the community, particularly located here at the crossroads between the major north, south, east, west routes within Marin County.
Let's talk about alternatives. What is the downside to waiting, pausing to see what the ripple effects and the ongoing impacts of the work from home changes in our workforce? See what those changes are, and then when you know what groups are moving where within the county, and maybe it's not a daily migration into the city, but it's throughout the county, something different, and then think about how to best configure a transit center or centers or hubs or modules that would make sense. So the bottom line is, what's the harm in pausing for, say, a year to come back and refine these plans to better address what there will certainly be changes in our business and transportation network in the Bay Area.
As things reopen, we'll learn what the new commute patterns are clearly. That having been said, the transit center does not work well today for the 830 bus trips that go through it. And it doesn't work well for those people that currently are going about their lives, whether it's to school, to work, or to medical appointments. And we do know that as things reopen, we'll see some customers come back. We also know that we don't plan for it today. We're planning for a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and 15 years from now. So if we want to be ready at that future date, to pause now seems ill-advised. We've been going slow these last couple of years, working closely with everybody. But we certainly, if you think we should pause, we look forward, to hearing and learning more about that in the coming weeks and coming months. But at this juncture, we feel it's prudent to proceed. Because the current transit center has been harmed by or bisected by the smart extension to Larkspur. It doesn't provide the flexibility we need to really operate the transit system that we need for today's ridership. And so we think that it's important that it proceed, and it may be an area where we see things differently than you, Madam Vice Mayor.
Speaking of the train to the ferry, I understand that ferry ridership is down by 96%. Given that decrease in ridership, have you given any thought to the possibility that the train would not necessarily be going all the way to Larkspur?
I can't speak for SMART, so I won't. That having been said, though, you're trying to frame the world going forward based on today's snapshot in time. And I would recommend to the community that we not do that. Right now, downtown San Francisco is locked up. You cannot go in the Salesforce Tower. It is closed. You cannot go in the Transamerica Pyramid. You cannot go in City Hall. The Moscone Center is being used for a mass vaccination site. Well, 3 years from now, that'll be different. 3 years from now, there may be conventions back. There may be people going into tall buildings a couple days a week. And when that happens, people at a convention in downtown San Francisco, when it's snowing back in Bismarck, may want to hop on a boat to go across and to get on a train and to go visit downtown San Rafael to walk around and shop and buy antiques while telling their boss how difficult those PowerPoint presentations were at the Moscone Center. The transit center, at the SMART connection and the ferry connection are vital to the Bay Area, unless we say that we're not going to open up our downtowns, whether it's downtown San Rafael, downtown San Francisco, downtown Oakland, or downtown Sausalito. I don't think most people expect that our communities will look 3 years from now like they do today. And if our communities are like that, then the American Rescue Plan will not be large enough to allow the communities to survive.
Well, and I absolutely agree with you. We shouldn't build it for today, but your plan is to build it for yesterday or 2 years ago. So, but we need some analysis of what those changes are going to be and tailor our system going forward. But we're just debating. It's a different perspective. There are new facts, that we didn't have 2 years ago when we started this process, and pretending that the future is going to look like the past doesn't seem to me to be a prudent road forward. And I'll just leave it at that and turn it back over to Mayor Kay.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and thank you, Director, for jumping on. And as I understand, part of the updates is going around and hearing the questions that we're hearing from our residents, and part of it is to share that. So as you go forward, you'll both have the answers, and we can be in conversation. So thank you, Vice Mayor, for your input and your questions. So I'll just go around the screen. Councilmember Hill, please. Do you have any questions or comments?
Hi, thank you, Mayor Kate. So I have two questions that I'd like to pose. The first one is on the topic of traffic engineering. Obviously, we're talking about a heavy confluence in our community of many different types of modality. And I would just love a characterization of how the district has modeled to this point. Obviously, I'd love to look under the hood, so to speak, for the sake of our community, to understand a little bit how you were able to model and understand, how you're able to make, say, judgments as to whether or not one configuration was, say, different or better than another. If you can help characterize that for us.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different tools that are useful for that. The first one that's, I guess, most comprehensive from an engineer's perspective is the VISM microsimulation model, where we code in all the different bus routes, all the different auto movements, all the different roads, all the different bikes, all the different pedestrians into the network under various scenarios. So we do an existing one to calibrate it to pre-COVID conditions to make sure that our models be performing accurately. And then we also model each of the build alternatives. And we ran it for 2020 conditions. We ran it for 2040 conditions to make sure that it's going to work out in the future based on the data provided by the city out of the general plan update. And so we basically bring all the modes together and then watch how they interact in terms of delays, in terms of congestion, in terms of where the hotspots pop up. So that is a great tool for looking at the effects of the different alternatives and all sorts of different modes and how they interact and what implications that has for City of Santa Fe streets. But then there's other factors as well, such as looking at pedestrian walking paths, transfer times, conflict points for pedestrian walking paths, bicycle connections, what sort of bicycle connections we're connecting to, what the transfer patterns look like between rail and bus or between one bus route and another bus route. And so, this is a transit center, but it's about being a multimodal hub. And so it's where people get off one mode and get on another mode. And so there's a lot of thought in terms of like what that interaction, that interface looks like between one mode and another, whether somebody is walking to the transit center or biking to the transit center from downtown Santa Fe or other locations such as the schools, or they're just passing through the transit center from one bus to another. Earlier data that didn't highlight in this presentation, but it's worth noting, is that we found that roughly half of the origins and destinations of the transit center are actually downtown Santa Fe and the surrounding area. And so while a lot of people look at the transit center and say, it's people coming from San Anselmo and going to San Francisco, there's some of that, but about half the people are actually getting to and from downtown Santa Fe. And so it's really important then to think about what that access looks like, not just between buses, but also between the community and the transit services. And so that kind of all feeds together into the analysis.
Thank you. And just two follow-ups to that then based on your response. So it sounds like you're able to feed in a range of assumptions. And I think I'm trying to elaborate further on Vice Mayor Bushy's point, which is, in the absence of anything now, I guess I'm looking to how you derive with some confidence, say, let's call it a non-regrettable decision if we were able to move forward. I guess, are you looking at relying upon this modeling as ways to look at various outcomes based on kind of divergent assumptions based, say, on live-work dynamic, et cetera? I guess I'm just curious, like how many permutations did you look through to kind of understand and try to mitigate a regrettable decision?
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple different aspects to sort of future scenarios. One is from the auto standpoint of will traffic continue to grow? Will development happen? Will, I think we've already seen numbers from TAM indicating that freeway congestion on 101 is getting pretty close to where it was before, or at least heading in that direction. That their freeway percent, the volumes just keep going up and up. So that's kind of one scenario of like, what will traffic look like today or in the future? Another is in terms of transit service and what that looks like today and in the future. And so, in terms of the model, we modeled, anticipated future routing and that sort of thing. But I think one of the real benefits of this project is the flexibility it provides in terms of the types of service that can be provided at the transit center. There's a variety of different vehicle sizes that are used by the transit operators, not just Golden Gate and Marin, but also the airporters, Greyhound, and other shuttle services. And so one of the key components of all these build alternatives was how do we design the transit center to provide flexibility in terms of the future service deployment. So maybe instead of one big bus that goes down to San Anselmo, maybe it's just a couple little shuttles instead. And so making sure the transit center is designed to provide different sizes of fleet and different flexibility in routing was really key. And I can't say that we incorporated that into our VISM microsimulation model due to the extensive effort that it would take to model those. But in terms of the design, that was really a key component of the design, is providing that future flexibility. So if Marin Transit in the future decides they want to change some of their service models, the transit center can still handle it.
Yeah, I appreciate your last comment. That was actually my follow-up, was how did you define flexibility? I think you went into anecdotally what that might look like. I would just say that it may feel like it's going into the depths of the problem space to go into that level of technicality. I do think that this community can, if I can say so, can handle that. And I know that they would want to understand what flexibility means, because I think that there is a huge amount of permutation ahead of us of what this is going to look like. And I think it would be helpful. I don't know if it's easy to do in a presentation style. I'll challenge the district to try to convey that, but I do think that we can handle a level of nuance, because I think this community wants that level of confidence. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lorenz Gulati.
Yeah, hi. So thank you so much for the presentation and for all the work that you have put into this. I guess that we are the new council members coming into place, although I have been following this project for a while. My comment a little bit along Vice Mayor Bushy, thinking about this project was set up more than a couple of years ago, but looking into how we are changing now with the pandemic, how people are, working more at home instead of going to the office. And obviously that probably would change a little bit, but I don't think we are going to go to the past. And I understand the transit center has buses coming and going to San Francisco. It has buses going around San Rafael. It has the smart trains. So it has the shuttles going to the airport. So they have definitely different riderships. But I was a little bit like, okay, so what happens? I know that you've been putting a lot of efforts on this project, but what will happen if we will wait 1-2 years and see what happens? And my other comment was, or question was around, I was on the school board before, and in many instances, I think a lot of the ridership happens from people in the canal. I think it's 60%. I don't remember the number, but have we thought about the routes have always been the same, but can we look at the routes? And for example, the kids that they are going to San Rafael High School, instead of going to the transit center, can they just go to San Rafael High School? Can we have a route that goes direct? The kids that, or people that they are going to Terra Linda, can they go directly to Terra Linda without stopping in a transit center? Can you create a new route from the canal to Davison Middle School through Anderson Drive? and just thinking about the future of transportation, where you might have the smart buses where you call them on the phone and they can pick you up. I think, Adam, you were mentioning having maybe smaller shuttles and being flexible. So I guess it's just, this is a big project, and I feel that it's based on all data. I think there is some considerations that we need to keep in mind. So these are a little bit my thoughts, and knowing that the riders that they go to San Francisco, I do think that that's going to change. It's not going to go back to what it was before, because you can see it even like in the real estate in San Francisco, that big corporations are getting rid of their, buildings. So I don't know if you have, these are my comments, and the most excited part that I'm right now about the transit center, honestly, is the bike lane, the multipath, because I really think that that's going to be the future around San Rafael, people that are going to be walking or biking or, like electric bikes. So I love that, actually. So yeah, these are my comments. I don't know if you have any answers for me, and yeah, so thank you. And I know again that you have put a lot of work into this, a lot of work. So, but I'm just looking at it with like a fresh eyes, and also the current situation with the pandemic and how that has changed life everywhere, in the world. So.
Thank you. I don't know if Adam or Director Mulligan.
I think we're hearing a theme that there's a thought that maybe we don't need a big transit center in downtown San Rafael. Just a couple of thoughts. One is Marin imports a lot of its service workers. So we have a bus that goes across the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, the Route 40, that takes folks from Contra Costa County, from the Del Norte BART station and neighborhoods in Richmond, stops at the transit center, and then people transfer to other buses, typically Marin Transit local buses, or they walk to jobs up 4th Street. And so I think, it might help if we understand a little bit collectively where people get off the bus, where they're going, because some of your merchants might be disappointed if they can't get workers, at some future date, because workers can't get to a job via transit very easily in San Rafael. So I think it's incumbent upon us to, as we release the draft environmental document, we push out the information and we do deeper dives to answer some of the questions that you're answering, so we can have a common understanding and reach a consensus on what's the best way to go forward. But clearly we're hearing that there's a perception, whether it's real or not, I don't know, that we're not going to see a lot of people wanting to take a bus from outside the region and connect to buses at the major east-west crossroads to travel around Marin and San Rafael, because this is where the north, south, and east, west comes together. And I think understanding some of the people that were riding the bus and understanding people who are riding the bus today and making sure that we don't shortchange their needs is, I think, important. And I think we can collectively come to probably some common understanding on going forward. So these are very helpful comments for us to let us know what your thoughts are and your concerns.
You.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. No, and I was going to say, and I think that's definitely valid. And I guess it would be very helpful when we are talking about the ridership is also looking at the routes that we currently have. And are those maybe some of them, because some of the feedback I was also getting from some of the residents in the canal is that, somebody said, my daughter goes, to Terra Linda, and they go to the transit center, and then they have to wait there for like 40 minutes until they get the other bus. So, maybe looking into the routes that we have right now, and are they, can we modify them to make it more efficient as well? So I really appreciate you getting the feedback. And
thank you, Councilmember Urens-Gulati. Councilmember Kurtz.
Thank you, Mayor Kate, and for the presentation and the information. I guess I had a different lens looking at this, because I was looking at the 3 different models from the efficiency perspective, which model would be most efficient, both for passengers and for drivers around, safety and welcoming. So those are sort of the 3 factors right now that I was looking at, the different models. And my question is, in terms of the discussion that I've been hearing, how much is it? Are the models much different in terms of size than what we're currently dedicated to for transportation? In terms of, like, I don't know how you would measure whether it's square footage or what would be based on what we have currently. If there's a question of are we dedicating too much space? I think that's what I'm hearing potentially. I'm not sure if it's really that much different than what we have today. I feel like today's model is not very efficient. And so there's a need to have a new model. I could be wrong. So that's sort of the question in terms of the size. And then in terms of the evaluations of the different models, I know that it seems like every time I drive downtown, there's police or fire also using these exact same streets. Major arterial, major pathways. And I'm wondering if the police and fire chiefs have had an opportunity to provide feedback and evaluation in terms of what would provide the best for their navigation. Because Heatherton's very busy accessing and down Third. And I mean, that whole corridor seems to be a very busy intersection area for police and fire. And so those are sort of my questions in terms of evaluating and looking at these different models. But I think that's a piece of feedback that I didn't see provided, which would be helpful.
Yeah, I can see if I can dig into the size question sort of offhand. I believe they're all probably fairly comparable to the current configuration. There's some kind of complexity right now. There's tracks running right through the middle of the site. And for example, under the freeway, there'd be some, the creek and columns. And so it might not be exactly the same, but I think they're roughly comparable, I would guess. But let me see if I can get an answer to you on that. Regarding the implications for emergency vehicle circulation and access, I believe the alternatives would not have a fundamental effect on that circulation. I think, for example, like the whistle stop block alternative closes Tamalpais to autos, but it would certainly remain open for emergency vehicle access. So in a way, it could actually improve it for EV circulation to not have any autos on that street. Under the freeway, it doesn't really change significantly any roadway configuration. And 4th Street Gateway also doesn't, the right turn preclusion wouldn't really affect emergency vehicles. So kind of off the top of my head, I would say there'd be no obvious impact. Certainly as the project advances, we would very much want to closely coordinate with fire and police to make sure that their interests are being reflected in the plans. That would certainly be a critical component as part of future project phases.
Great, thank you. And if there is an overall concern about the size of any of these models, is it based on ridership, or is it what would be a determining factor to reduce the size? Is it trips or ridership? Because at what point does that change?
Yeah, the main factor I would say determining size is the amount of transit service at the transit center. And so if there's not so much vehicle size, and I mean, there's a lot of kind of factors that sort of weigh in, but at the end of the day, it's really about the amount of transit service. So if the amount of transit service is anticipated to remain the same in the future, maybe it's more shuttles, maybe it's more TNC, whatever the change is, as long as that amount of service running through the transit center is similar, then that's really what the transit center is configured around. There's a lot of kind of design details around pedestrian waiting areas and customer service sizing and things like that. But I would say that the overall primary motivator for size is really the number of, or basically the space for transit service. And so that would be the main determinant.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Again, we appreciate you coming this evening, and I think there are some themes. I think you'll find some of my questions are similar, and it really is getting at the data piece of it. And it's not necessarily to say that the three options aren't aren't the options, all the options that we need, but to understand how those are the options we need. And we all recognize, SMART is down, I think 80% or this early part of this year compared to early of 2020. As Vice Mayor Bushy's talked about, I know there's been a decline in Golden Gate, the number of bus services. And those are two of the entities. And then third one, of course, is Marin Transit, right? So those are the three kind of transit systems that go through. And at Marin Transit, we're planning on getting back to our 70% of our pre-pandemic levels in the next couple of years, but that's still a hit of 30%. And so I think what we're trying to figure out is how do we drill down, or how do we get a handle on who is riding? And Director Mulligan, you were talking about this, where are people starting, who is riding, so we can understand then how what the best alternative is. And when I hear that it is now 4,500 people that are going through the transit center, down from 9,000. And I know that of the 9,000, I think around 60% were marine transit riders, which, as you've indicated, and we all know, tend to be often are lower income, transit dependent, getting to jobs, right? So we want to support, marine transit wants to support them. We all want to support getting those folks to where they need to go. But these are big, big drops. And so if we know that the local routes are still going to be heavily utilized, but maybe some of the commuter routes might disappear or not come back, just what does that look like? And how do we use that data, the reality of COVID, knowing the change in commuting patterns, how does that affect, how does that support, I guess, the current alternatives? And is there other additional new info that we could collect that supports the alternatives? Because again, we, as Councilmember Urens-Gulati has stated, we get it. There's been a lot of work here. And I think what we're feeling is for us to say, hey, data that was accumulated in 2016, that's what I think your calendar showed, Adam, although I think initial conversations were before then, to say that all holds and we're just going ahead. I think we're just trying to have a dialogue around that and understanding how it works with those alternates. I know that I need to understand that. And again, once we go through that, looking at drilling the numbers, it's like, oh, okay, now I understand why whatever, fill in the option alternative really, really works going forward. It worked in the past and it still works going forward. And I think that's what you're hearing from us. And you might already all know because you have been so deeply ingrained and seeped in this, but we haven't. And what we've been experiencing is COVID and understanding the change in commute patterns. So I think, and we can always talk more offline about this, but I really think there's some additional data or ways of presenting it that shows these are why these alternates, you can do them all three of them or whatever, still makes sense. So I just wanted to build on what Vice Mayor Bushy was saying, and that's why we're really getting into that. The only other questions I have is two others.
Could I answer that a little bit? And thanks for the comment. We clearly hear it loud and clear that there's a perception that we really don't need the transit center, at least in its current size form, and that transit ridership.
Yeah, I don't think that's what we're saying.
But just if I could, for background, most of our, I'd say like over 90% of our commute trips do not go through the transit center. So when Golden Gate bus ridership is way down, most of our trips don't go near the transit center. A bus leaving Santa Rosa, a commute bus, does 2 stops and it doesn't stop in Marin County. The Route 4 out of Mill Valley doesn't come to the transit center. So just to be clear, most of our bus service for Golden Gate does not go through the transit center. And the same thing with ferry. Very, very, very few of our ferry customers go through the transit center on a train or on a bus. So I just want to get that out there for the record. But clearly, ridership is going to look different. The community is going to look different. Business is going to look different. And we hear that you want to think about that and understand that more and see some data that supports what we think may or may not be prudent, and to have a conversation around that. And so that's helpful feedback for tonight.
Yeah, and that plays into my next question, which is around who will be using it or who will continue to use it. And we have much more of a keen equity lens. I know that Marine Transit, TAM, and SMART have all adopted equity statements. I assume that Golden Gate Board has too. You're nodding your head. So yes, so when I hear about who responded to the survey, I just would be curious how that information of the people actually using the service, because, right, we want to make sure whatever is built reflects that, how that is showing up and the input you've received from those surveys. And I did hear, Adam, they generally, I liked all 3 of them, but is there a way to drill down further? Is there ways that the alternatives might evolve, and maybe it's in the details of it, based on that input, right? It's not just enough to get surveys. It's not just enough to get information. Big part of learning from equity and bringing in inclusion is getting the information and then actually utilizing the information, not enough just to get it. So I would love to hear more in future presentations. This is what we heard, not a blanket, but really specific, and our alternative evolved because of this, or whatever that is. In terms of your desired elements of center list, I'd be really curious. What did the folks using it, what was their list? right? So to really show, and so for us to defend, say, hey, this transit center that's going to disrupt downtown and we're going to support it, but we know it's the right thing for our community. It's the right thing for our transit riders. So we're sharing what are the things that we need in order to support this conversation with you all and with the other agencies involved. So that was just a kind of a little bit of a reminder about equity and how it's starting to show up in transit. And we haven't talked about it as plainly and as clearly as we're starting to talk about it now. So I don't know if that's really a question. I mean, maybe Adam might have more information on the survey data, if it's public or.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we do have more data. We also did a survey earlier on in the project, probably in late 2018, I would guess, that also collected some information specific to what you're getting at. So we could go back to that data and pull something together. Yeah,
I think that, again, and a lot of it is just, it's going to sound how I say this, but checking our assumptions, right? So we make assumptions because you all know transit, right? And we know our community, but it's making sure that the assumptions or the decisions we're making actually resonate with the people who will really be using transit. So thank you for that. And then the last question is very straightforward. As I understand, the RM3 funds are in a legal challenge right now. Can you speak to how that would or would not impact this project?
Sure. It's a great question, Mayor Kate. Regional Measure 3 was a voter initiative passed by people in 9 counties of the Bay Area to raise the tolls on the other bridges, not the Golden Gate Bridge, for a series of projects and transit enhancements throughout the region. And it was passed with more than a 50% threshold, but less than a 2/3. And it was put on as a fee, not a tax. And the taxpayer group brought litigation against the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, acting as the Bay Area Toll Authority, challenging that, saying that it really isn't a fee, it's a tax, because some of the projects are too far removed from where the money's being collected. This was not one of the projects they highlighted in the litigation, but if the litigation is successful, the whole thing is set aside. So they went to court, and when the lawsuit was filed, MTC, acting as BADA, started putting all the collected tolls in an escrow account, so the money's not available to project sponsors. And in the initial litigation, MTC prevailed and the taxpayer group lost. They appealed it. On appeal, MTC won again. However, now it's been appealed to the state Supreme Court. And the fact that the state Supreme Court took the case is a reason to acknowledge that the money's not a sure thing. Regional Measure 3 included $30 million of funding for this project. In addition to that, the Bridge District has offered that if we proceed with the project, we would sell the existing site and use the proceeds from that in addition to Regional Measure 3 to help pay for this, and we would put toll dollars in and other grants. But clearly that's a huge risk for the funding of the project. And as you know, Mayor Kate, it takes political will and money to do a public infrastructure project. So if there is no political will and if there's no money, it's not going to happen. That having been said, no project sponsor in the Bay Area, whether it's Golden Gate or SMART or anybody else, has stopped the environmental planning and design process for the project. Some agencies have signed letters of no prejudice with MTC, where they're spending their own money at risk. And if RM3 survives the court challenge, then they'll get paid with those toll dollars. But if the court rules against MTC at the state Supreme Court level, those agencies are on the hook for those monies that they've spent. So we have not signed a letter of no prejudice with MTC. So we are awaiting the outcome of any litigation. Any litigation would be resolved long before this project would ever go to construction. So we'll know whether or not we have a funding plan at that juncture. Hopefully that answers your question, Mayor Kate.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, because as you said, the funding is a key component to move forward. So thank you. So if you two sit tight, what I'd like to do is open this up to the public. And I'm sure there are people that would like to weigh in with either comments or questions. And if there are questions, we can be writing them down and we can answer them at the end. Otherwise, we'll just receive the public comment. And I see City Clerk Lindsay Lara is online.
So if you're on Zoom and you'd like to participate, please use the raise hand feature. If you're commenting by phone, please press *9. And once you hear the notification that I am asking you to speak, you'll need to press *6 to unmute yourself. If you're participating on YouTube, please submit your comments now. Write public comment in advance and make sure that you're also submitting your comments in groups because there is a character limit. For those of you who are watching through Zoom, I will hold up a 10-second reminder as soon as you have 10 seconds left on the clock for your 2 minutes. Okay. our first speaker.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can now. Go ahead.
Hi, Mayor Kate and members of the City Council. My name is Warren Wells, and I'm the Policy and Planning Director for Marin County Bicycle Coalition. I was just calling in to speak in support of the whistle stop alternative. We just wanted to speak that of the three alternatives, we find this preferable from a pedestrian and bicycle access standpoint and for transit users transferring between modes. We feel that whistle stop is better connected to downtown San Rafael and removes the need for transit users to cross a busy street when transferring between buses or a smart train. And importantly, for our purposes, it's the only alternative that includes a clear route for bicyclists traveling along West Tamalpais Avenue, which is the only low-stress route on a north-south axis through downtown and a key part of the north-south Greenway. Our only significant concern is the siting of pickup and drop-off location on the east side of West Tamalpais, immediately north of 4th Street. Taxis and ride shares are notoriously incompatible with bicycle travel, with people opening doors without checking for riders and vehicles entering or exiting the street in a hurry. We urge the city to provide feedback that West Tamalpais north of 4th Street should be prioritized for low-stress bicycle facility rather than Uber, Lyft, and taxis. A choice that would be in alignment with the current draft of the downtown San Rafael Precise Plan and the 2018 San Rafael Bicycle Pedestrian Master Plan. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Warren.
Hi, this is Justin Barnett. I spoke a little earlier, and I wanted to just finish my comments at this time. I would say that based on the Golden Gate Transit statistics, 83 to 92% of the population of San Rafael actually don't use the bus. And my office is located a block from the train station and 2 blocks from the bus depot that exists right now. And the train's been running through the transit center for over a year now. And as far as I know, there hasn't been any issues. And this transit center proposal seems to be a solution looking for a problem. And based on also the Golden Gate Transit statistics, the under the freeway option is the most efficient from a traffic standpoint. I noted that both the delays would be reduced under that option, and it eliminates the inundation of the city center by bus traffic and moves the bus activity away from the center of town. The majority of the respondents to the latest survey wanted this, and according to Golden Gate Transit statistics, it seems to be the best from a congestion standpoint. Certainly involves a lot of work and money spent in construction that doesn't seem to be completely necessary. But I don't think that the citizens of San Rafael in total would want the center of the city to be inundated with bus traffic and noise. And don't be fooled by artist renditions. A bus station is just a bus station. It's not going to be some exciting destination and, people strolling through with their strollers and their kids and couples holding hands is just not going to be what happens. And I would encourage San Rafael to spend its administrative time working on the homeless problem that's exploding in our city right now. And those people need more help than the people who are using the existing transit center.
Thank you, Mr. Barnett. I don't know if you can see the screen, but we have your 2 minutes. And thank you for calling back in with additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Kate.
And before Lindsay speaks, Amy Lykover did reach out and let me know there was an order for 4 speakers. However, I'd like them to know that Cynthia Landecker did fall off the call. So she was the second speaker, so it'll be a little bit out of order. Go ahead, Lindsay.
So sounds like I'm on.
Yes,
can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Good, very good. My name is Lindsay Klump. I am president of San Rafael Heritage, the city's only organization committed to the preservation of our local historic structures. We strongly advocate for retaining these buildings so that San Rafael keeps its identity and special charm as it continues to develop. Just as we are dedicated to this effort, so is the city. San Rafael's commitment to historic preservation is reflected in the city's municipal code. I will paraphrase from chapter 2.18 on the historic preservation in the municipal code. The City Council of San Rafael finds that structures of historical interest are essential to the health, safety, economy, and general welfare of the public. Regarding the options selected for the transit center, if it is either the whistle stop block or the whistle stop alternative variant, we especially advocate for the preservation of the whistle stop building itself. It was originally the depot for the Northwestern Pacific Railroad and is an integral part of our city's development. We are San Rafael's preservation watchdog, and we will be here to defend this priceless treasure and other historic buildings adjacent to the transit center. And let me emphasize that we're also a partner in partnership with the city. We at San Rafael Heritage have given hundreds of volunteer hours to assist the city in preparing the updated historic resource inventory with their ratings for the downtown precise plan and on the plan itself. We also have members who recently contributed to the drafting of the city's general plan 2040. To close, we expect the city to continue its commitment to our historic treasures in their decisions on the transit center. So now I also would like to ask Lindsay if I could read Cynthia Landecker's statement. She has lost her internet connection, and so may I continue with that?
Hold on one second. That is a new question in this age of technology, because normally each speaker is just 2 minutes, regardless of whether they're reading their own words or someone else's. So is it possible that you could dump it into the chat or to the Facebook? City Clerk Lara, do you have a recommendation?
Yeah, it can either be emailed over to me. My email, Amy Lykover, does have that also, or it can go into the chat, if that would be your preference, Mayor Kate.
Okay, so I don't know how to put it into chat. I have, that I'm not familiar with. Would it be could I copy and paste? Is it?
Yeah. You can copy it and then you can paste it right into chat, or you can just email it to Lindsay. And it's okay if it's out of order. I mean, if there's another speaker, if you want to email it to her and then to City Clerk Lara, then she can read it.
Okay, let me. I'm going to copy.
Thank you, Lindsay. I just know that
Thank you.
This slippery slope otherwise. Thank you.
Okay.
There we go. Hi, Leslie Simons. The Northwestern Pacific Depot is a historic building and the last remaining highly visible feature of the development of our city as a railroad suburb. The importance of the building increased when the Northwestern Pacific brought their headquarters here from Sausalito in 1944. The need for additional office space enclosed the entire building, all during the railroad's occupancy and ownership, its period of significance. We worked with two architectural historians. Richard Brandy was hired to review the July 2012 JRP Department of Parks and Recreation Form 523. In his October 15, 2015 letter, he found that the JRP evaluation is flawed and its conclusions are not substantiated. They merely conclude that there is a loss without establishing a factual basis and doing an analysis. The building still conveys its historic significance as a railroad station. Diana Painter worked with the evaluator extensively to conform the new 523 to the standards required by the state. In her April 2020 supporting letter, she stated, "There is no question of the importance of this building and site to San Rafael and the region's history. It's undoubtedly significant for its design. The fact that few original buildings remain increases the importance of this depot. San Rafael Heritage is adamant that at the minimum, the building be made a local landmark and the Secretary's standards for rehabilitation be followed to improve its possible inclusion on the National and State Historic Resources list. Golden Gate Transit must actively pursue both the restoration and the landmark process to protect the building in whatever form or location it ends up. We also insist not just consulting with, but being a part of the team for the eventual treatment of the depot. Include 927 Tamalpais as its contribution. It is contributory to the future historic district.
So Leslie, if you could finish where we're at time. I know it's hard to see, but yes. If
No,
you have
I know. I have a timer going.
Oh, okay.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for taking the effort.
Hello, my name is Amy Lykover. I live in Gerstle Park and I'm the Vice President of San Rafael Heritage. The San Rafael Heritage Steering Committee has reviewed the various San Rafael Transit Center options. While we are not endorsing an option, we strongly urge that existing historic structures be preserved and utilized within any new transit center configuration. Otherwise, a timeless sense of connection to San Rafael history that gives this area a sense of place and identity will be lost. Historic buildings should be deliberately kept as part of the station area and their preservation is paramount. The historic structures in the station area include 930 Tamalpais Avenue at the Northwestern Pacific Depot, 927 Tamalpais Avenue, known as Trevor's or the Barrel House, 709 to 711 4th Street, known as the Tavern on 4th, 633 and 637 5th Avenue, known as the Queen Anne Houses. Our group has worked tirelessly with the city on a number of important historic preservation projects. We ask to continue to work in partnership with the city no matter which option is decided upon. Call upon us. We will lend our expertise as issues develop to be certain these historic structures are properly preserved. When the scope of work for station restoration and reuse is prepared, Heritage expects to be invited to the table with the city and Golden Gate Transit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy.
Yes, am I on?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Usually your name is called. This is Wendy Callens, and I'm the president of Sustainable Marin. And I'm viewing this now because I want to come in and support the whistle stop alternative. I think it's pretty obvious at this point that the whistle stop alternative is the one that's most popular with transit riders, the one that would have the most benefit for creating a placemaking for downtown San Rafael, and is one of the most cost-effective alternatives. But listening to the comments by the council members, I do want to comment on, it seems as though it's not as much which alternative, but whether we should be planning a transit center before we know what's happening with transit. So I really want to argue in favor of moving ahead, because transit has got to be a very central part of our transportation system. And one of the most important ways to make it that way is to make the transit centers an attractive and viable alternative for people to use. And so in considering this, I think it's not a matter of do we need a transit center, but we do need a transit center. And as someone who's been participating in the regional work as in my capacity with being at the advisory council of MTC, I'm closely following the Blue Ribbon Committee, the Fair Integration Committee, and all the work that's being done to ensure that we do have a future for public transit. So I really want to see San Rafael do its part by creating a world-class transit center right smack in the middle of San Rafael. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.
Good evening. I'm Vida Flores. I'm a resident of Novato and the chair of the Equity and Access Subcommittee for Metropolitan Transportation Commission's Advisory Council, along with Wendy Kalen. The Bettini Transit Center before the pandemic was considered the second busiest transit center in the Bay Area. And when visioning a transit center for the future, we are looking 20 years into the future, not just the near-term future. And although the pandemic has put a dip in ridership, the continued elimination of parking is a reality. And as we see parklets taking up parking spaces, so an efficient bus system and safe environment is necessary to go to job-rich environments and reduce greenhouse gases. Remember, we are visioning for long-term future and not just the near-term future. I want to continue to remind you of that. We know that bus ridership is comprised of individuals who don't have cars or find that it's more efficient and more convenient to ride public transportation outside of the county. And our riders must, our county must commit to get the public out of their cars and onto buses to reduce greenhouse gases. It's more efficient and faster to ride the bus from San Anselmo to San Rafael than it is to drive and park from San Anselmo and park in San Rafael. And we must move forward on a project that is focused on a location where traffic is slowed down, where drop-offs and pickups are safe, and where pedestrians don't have to fear for their life to use public transportation. And it is downright dangerous and hazardous for the public to maintain the transit center where it is. A number one feature that needs to be considered is safety. And from personal experience, it's intimidating and scary to be at the transit center after dark. The general public should not have to fear for their life to get home. And locating a transit center underneath a freeway is not a safe or safe environment either. And I asked the city council not to hold up this project, but they cannot, because they cannot envision a path to the future. And my concern is the city council has not ridden the bus, and they need to experience the bus system in order really to appreciate the nuances that the general public experiences.
Thank you so much for taking the time to call in. If you have additional, definitely email us, because there are no decisions being made tonight. So if you have additional comments, please email the city or email me, and we'll make sure all the council members get your input. Thank you.
Once again, if you are calling in, you're welcome to press *9 if you'd like to provide public comment, or you can use the raise hand feature. We do have a comment submitted through YouTube. This is from Kate Powers, representing the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. Our letter was included in the staff report. Santa Fe's Bike and Pedestrian 2018 Master Plan has two top goals: safety and connectivity. The plan recommends implementing a Vision Zero approach to intersection planning. BPAC recommends this approach to intersections in and around the footprints of the relocation site. Also, that the city identify routes, safe routes to transit, and prioritize safety and connectivity on those routes. Finally, this relocation offers an opportunity for Santa Fe to complete and prioritize the north-south Greenway from 2nd Street to Mission Avenue, a priority in Santa Fe's bike and pedestrian plans for the last 20 years. And I'm gonna try to make a phone call to someone who's lost internet and see if this works.
Thank you.
And be quick on our toes. Oh, I do have a phone. We have a caller now though.
Hi, excuse me. Hi, this is Kate Powers. I'm representing Marine Conservation League in this comment. In reviewing the alternatives presented by the Golden Gate Bridge District, We also compared the downtown San Rafael precise plan for this area, which identifies the area bounded by the transit center relocation footprint as a node or gateway. And we wanted to point out that the area has historically also functioned as an area of passage and flow, both for water and transportation. Amongst the different alternatives, we have a few comments. One is the 4th Street gateway concept includes a double right turn when you're heading south on Heatherton onto 3rd, and that intersection has just been reconfigured because there was a danger having a double left-hand turn onto Heatherton, and the sidewalk was removed. Our other comment is related to the whistle stop concept. That is the only one with the variation of the whistle stop block, relocating the whistle stop building where the completion of the segment of the north-south greenway is best. In terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, an improved, efficient, safe, and comfortable transit experience might impact net reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And I think that the survey points to the district's efforts in planning for people, not cars. The people that were surveyed that were transit users supported strongly the whistle stop block alternative, partly because it stands out in the community and those who use whistle stop will feel more included. One of the comments at the Canals Facebook meeting was that people who use transit, essential workers, don't want to feel like they're being hidden under the freeway, and they feel that it's dark and noisy and lacks visibility. And lastly, in terms of adaptation to sea level rise and future flooding, the downtown San Rafael precise plan recommends prioritizing natural systems and possibly restoring areas of urban wetlands. And we just wanted to point out that in addition to the concerns about building under the Caltrans property and other problems with the under the freeway alternative, the accumulation of gravel in Irwin Creek is currently removed with equipment that dredges the creek, and that the under the freeway concept would remove that.
Thank you. Thank you. And again, because we're accepting a lot of input and there are no decisions being made, I do encourage people who didn't get to say everything to email it to us. We really appreciate the input and the engagement our community has around this.
Okay, and I have Cynthia on the line, so go ahead, Cynthia.
Okay. Thank you very much for this chance to speak to you all. I'm Cynthia Landecker. I'm the co-founder and past president of San Rafael Heritage, which was formed in 2015. I should point out I no longer reside in San Rafael. I'm in Santa Rosa, but I lived in San Rafael for 51 years, and I think that entitles me to consider myself still part of the community, and I still care about it very much. So San Rafael Heritage, excuse me, our initial project in San Rafael Heritage was to protect San Rafael's, excuse me, 1929 Mission Revival Northwestern Pacific Railroad Depot from impending destruction in 2015. And we've devoted 6 years to the preservation of the building. In all those years, we conducted exhaustive research on every physical and historical aspect of the depot and its relationship to San Rafael's railroad and transportation history. And not only do our findings completely negate a previous study's conclusion that the depot has no historical value, we've established that the building retains enough historic integrity to deserve a local landmark designation, and we expect that it would be treated as such by both the city of San Rafael and the Golden Gate Bridge District. An important historic integrity element, by the way, is that the station is located on the site of an original Union Station, which was built by Peter Donahue in the year 1884. That's on the exact same site. Now we've applied formally for local landmark designation for this structure, and we submitted it to the city last year. So all of that is pending. Right now, the depot's historical value to our community lies in its connection to railroad, passenger, and freight service. expect that any new transit center can be made more meaningful and more successful if the existing depot is preserved and reworked so they can be part of it and have some meaning as a gateway.
Thank you. I think, was that a little alarm that went off? I know there's a lot going on tonight, so thank you everyone for making it work. But again, we appreciate you taking the time to call in and share your thoughts. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
City Clerk, you are multitasking, so thank you. No, thank you for enabling our community to give input. It's really important.
Of course, absolutely. We do have another caller.
Okay.
Hi, good evening. This is Bill Carney with Sustainable San Rafael, whose board has carefully reviewed the current transit center concepts, and we recommend that you support the whistle stop block concept, including its relocate whistle stop alternate as the preferred alternative for the project EIR. This alternative safely consolidates transit services on a single block while returning the iconic existing depot building to its transit use. According to the current transit district analysis, the whistle stop concept results in, quote, significant benefits to bus travel time and reliability and reduces traffic delay. It also has the potential to fulfill the other project objectives identified by the community, including providing a signature and I will say flexible open bus and train plaza at the city's front door, avoiding dangerous passenger street crossings, turning Tamalpais into a lively bike, pedestrian and retail corridor, catalyzing adjacent housing and commercial development, keeping needed commuter parking under 101, restoring Irwin Creek, and enhancing the pedestrian and bike connection under the freeway to the east end of 4th Street, the Montecito neighborhood, and onto the high school and the canal. To be a vibrant, walkable community, San Rafael needs great transit. With its core emphasis on the passenger experience, we believe the whistle stop block alternative could support that transit and our city most effectively. And I might add our workforce and our equity as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
I believe that concludes public comment. Let me just double check our YouTube stream.
Okay.
Yeah, that concludes public comment.
Thank you, City Clerk. Okay, I'm going to close the public comment and bring it back to the virtual dais. I know we've given a lot of input and asked a lot of questions, and just to clarify again, there's no decision on any alternate tonight. It's really, I think you've gotten a lot of input through our questions, but I do want to offer up the opportunity to any of the council members if they have additional comments that they would like to share with Director Mulligan or with Adam before they leave. Vice Mayor Bushy shaking her head no. Councilmember Lorenz-Galati, any additional comments?
No, I think I'm good. Again, I really appreciate all the efforts, and I don't think it is not saying that we don't want to build the transit center. It is more like I'm looking up from here to the next 20 years and what that's going to look like, and getting more data. What is the ridership and what is the right, a thing to do. And I think it is definitely an opportunity to reevaluate the routes as well, that maybe we can make it more efficient. And again, in particular, I'm thinking about the one bringing the kids from the canal to San Rafael High School is a huge inequity because those kids usually tend to be late, when the bus is late. So it would be really nice to get it closer to the school. So again, maybe an opportunity to, in addition to the transit center, looking at everything else, like the routes that we are following. So again, thank you so much for all your efforts. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilmember Hill, I saw you had an additional comment.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know you were going to call out. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Mulligan. Thank you, Adam, for appearing with us today. I would agree with the characterization that Councilmember Lorenz-Galati just said, which is, you've, I think, done a great service to invest so much time in this. I would recharacterize and also say what she just said, which is that I do think that we actually need a transit center. I think the nuance, and I hope it doesn't get lost, is that I think we're trying to find as much certitude for that we can. I think that at least I would agree that it's not a question of if, it's more a question of how and how we can convey that level of confidence with our community. Hopefully that doesn't get lost here in the characterization that was made earlier that we don't think we need one. I think we do. Yeah, and just, I don't think this is a secret either, but I took Golden Gate Transit every day until I couldn't, just during pandemic. So you would call me a faithful rider once things can come back. I did see the transit center literally every day as it passed through. So I am looking forward to a configuration that will work for this community. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll add that I know Vice Mayor Bushy also. I think one of the community input we got was that we haven't been through the transit center, but we actually have 2 commuters who hope to get back in there eventually. Councilmember Kurtz, any additional comment?
No additional comment. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So with that, again, we really appreciate you, Adam, and appreciate you, Director Mulligan, for hearing our questions and input. And I know we'll continue to be in conversation. So the next part on ours is there a motion to accept this report? And we'll proceed on.
So moved.
There's a second.
Second.
Okay, moved. And I think you're in Gulati, seconded. Roll call, please, City Clerk.
Vice Mayor Bushy.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Urans-Galati.
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye. That motion carries 5-0. Again, thank you, gentlemen, and we look forward to more conversation and collaboration. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. People can kind of stretch for a moment as Director O'Leary comes on. I know it's gotten late, but please don't skip and run through your presentation. We are delighted to have this on the agenda this evening. Economic recovery is incredibly important to the council and to our community. So please take the time. It just happens sometimes. Sometimes we have late nights, and tomorrow that is what coffee is for. So with that, I am going to turn it over to you, Director O'Leary.
Thank you so much, Mayor Kate. And I will do my best to not rush through. I've taken some notes, so you may see me kind of toggle between my slides and the notes, but I wanted to be well prepared for hopefully a good presentation for you tonight. I'm going to launch the share screen here so I can, let's see, here we go. All right. So thank you so much for having me here tonight. And tonight we're going to talk about the economic recovery update. You know, the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the national economy in a manner we haven't seen in modern times. It's affected every community and every industry in the United States. And so the information I'm going to provide to you tonight is considered, preliminary, as we are still feeling our way through this, moving through it. And as we know, it's not linear. We've had a lot of starts and we progress forward and progress back. And I'm going to show you some data tonight that kind of touches on that. For tonight's presentation, we're going to do a quick snapshot on Marin consumer spending and business revenue. I've pulled this data from a group called Opportunity Insights, which is a nonpartisan research group based out of Harvard University. They are tracking the recovery in real time through all states and, if possible, counties and jurisdictions down to the metro area. So I'll have some data for you there. We're also going to review the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic, kind of our immediate relief programs when March hit and we were in it, and what did we do to help our community manage through it? And then talk a little bit about where we are now, the midterm stages, and kind of the ongoing transitioning that we're working on. And then looking ahead, kind of what we hope to focus on and get your feedback tonight. This is informational only, no decisions need to be made. We're really looking for your thoughts and feelings about where we should go, and give any feedback of kind of where we've been and what you'd like to see changed. So to start, we're going to start with the consumer spending patterns, which is indexed from January 4th, 2020 until April 4th. That was the most recent data. And what you'll notice here along this graph there are X's that symbolize kind of when things closed down. These were the stay-at-home orders. And then you're going to see these little housing icons, which are when we started to partially reopen. And so you'll see that really during April, we hit a low in consumer spending, which was about a little over 40%. And as we have progressed through the pandemic, you can see where it tracked kind of the start of the stimulus payments. As we moved through partial reopenings back to closures, you can see the ebb and flow of the consumer spending. And as of now, this is the week ending of April 4th, we are finally in positive territory. We did hit positive territory up in kind of in the beginning of December, but then back down again with some of our closures. So we're at 0.2%, which is a really, I'd like to share some positive news. This is a good change to reflect on the consumer spending pattern. This has been indexed from Infinity Solutions, which is a consumer tracking data company that looks at credit card and debit purchases. And so we are happy to report that consumer spending in Marin is starting to trend positive. Now, on the other side of this is the percentage change in small business revenue. And again, this is indexed from 2020 all the way until now. And you can see that the drop in business revenue is really significant at the beginning of the pandemic. And we're looking at below 60%, almost 65% at the worst of the pandemic. And then as we start to move through the openings, the partial closures and back, you see these gyrations occur in the business revenue. And at one point, I think our highest kind of positive peak was towards the end of October with about a negative 11%, but now we're back down to 42% here at the end of January, beginning of February. So you can really see here how the pandemic really impacted small business revenue, and that's reflected in small business closures. It's reflected in job losses, both temporary and permanent, and also decreases to city revenues. So in the early stages of the COVID pandemic, one of the things we realized immediately was the need for cash flow. Small businesses experienced just a dry up of consumer activity. They were forced to close if they weren't an essential business, or if they could pivot, they were pivoting in ways that didn't meet the natural flows of their business prior to the pandemic. So in the early beginning stages, San Rafael, in partnership with the County of Marin, the San Rafael Chamber of Commerce, and the Downtown Business Association, BID, as well as many local businesses and residents, all donated to the COVID-19 disaster relief grant. In total, we were able to fundraise $250,000. And in the very early days of the pandemic, we were able to have an online submittal and disbursement program of up to 67 businesses who received grants ranging from $2,500 to $5,000. And in this grant program, we were very cognizant of wanting to have this be citywide and touch a diverse mix of businesses. So you're talking about childcare, restaurants, retail, personal service, professional, industrial. We really tried to touch as many industries as possible. And this really was a community-wide effort. From there, we also jumped into Marin Recovers, which is the County of Marin's kind of consortium around the recovery efforts. And as city staff and at the city council level, people participated in ongoing recovery meetings. In the early days, some of the things we first really focused on were what we called site protection protocols, SPPs. And these site protection protocols allowed businesses a template of how to reopen, what was required from them, how could they self-certify themselves to, one, show to the county that they were meeting the modifications needed for reopening, as well as signifying to the consumer that they had done what was needed in order to be COVID safe. We also worked on a public health signage campaign and created some beautiful templates that were available in both English and Spanish that were downloadable very easily for businesses to place in their window or point of sale to help message what was needed as far as masking, social distancing, hand sanitizing. We also worked on supportive compliance visits. So in the early days of the pandemic, our code enforcement manager, Anna Santiago, was really just legendary superhero status here, visiting small businesses, going through and talking with them about what was needed to keep them and their staff and their customers safe. So we were really fortunate to have Anna and her skills. We also worked on promoting awareness of federal, state, and local programs. It's not an exaggeration to say in the beginning of the pandemic, it felt like we were all drinking from a fire hose, trying to keep up with all the different programs that were available for our small businesses, large businesses, gig workers. And so the city very early on saw the need to serve as a trusted resource and create a portal on the city's website that outlined all of these various programs. From the payroll protection plan programs, both round 1 and round 2, to the economic injury disaster loans, as well as the community development block grant, coronavirus funding, and Great Plates program. Those were just a small snippet of programs that were available. So as city staff, we worked to maintain those pages and source that information and get people where they needed to go and access to the information that they needed. We also worked on vulnerable population support, and we did that by participating with the county's Canal Emergency Response Team. City staff stepped up in helping support testing sites, staffing testing sites, public service announcements, getting out public service announcements to various industries impacted by COVID-19, forming business partnerships and outreach for mask production, hand sanitizing, all sorts of things. We also, again, worked on supportive compliance visits, as well as working with our digital team to create the Canal Wi-Fi Access Project, which basically provided, I think, great internet service in an internet lacking area, so that students could participate in homeschool learning, work from home could be available through this Wi-Fi program. So that was really a big piece. We also assisted in the disbursement with the county for the Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus Funds, which could have gone to a variety of uses, but we felt it was really important. Council felt it was really important that it go to rental assistance as well as business loans and grant programs. And so that was additional support that was provided. We also, I would say, are still working through some of those now. So even though it says immediate, some of the small business grant stuff, we're still working through issuing some of those. We also did a lot of work in reopening programs. So as businesses were transitioning, if you think back to the earlier chart of the X's and then the small buildings, it's signifying partial reopenings, helping businesses move through the partial reopenings. First, it started with curbside pickup and drop off, creating those zones within our downtown, converting spaces block by block that allowed businesses access to their customer for curbside pickup and drop off, as well as parklets. You know, there were in the early days of the pandemic, and even now at reduced occupancy, restaurants are some of the most affected businesses in our community to meet the public health requirements and social distancing requirements. And basically all outdoors activities are much safer than, you know, being indoors in the early times of the pandemic. So what we did was work with our city teams from Public Works, Fire, police, community development, building department, parking services, and economic development to revamp our parklet program. In the beginning days, online, very instant and rapid. And then as you'll see later, we are moving into transitioning to more semi-permanent. So it makes the atmosphere and experience a little nicer. In the beginning days, we weren't sure how long this was going to last and how temporary it was going to be. And so we shifted our focus into making that dining experience more pleasurable. We also worked on creating programming, right, that took advantage of the outdoors. And so Dining Under the Lights was our signature program piece that was created really in partnership, strong partnership with the Downtown Business Improvement District. The Dining Under the Lights program basically closes 4th Street to vehicular traffic on Thursday and Friday nights and allows businesses, and I would say it's mostly restaurants, retailers were also invited to participate, the ability to open and conduct business outside. We also created a lot of marketing support programs, one of which was we launched the Life in San Rafael website and social media campaign that really focused on business features. We would have photographers go photograph the business owner in their space, interview them. We've done podcasts, all different sorts of means to keep the community connected to their local businesses, and that's been really well received. We also created a GIS business mapping feature on our city website that allowed businesses to go online and put their business on there and talk about their COVID-19 hours, any alterations they've made, or just to say, hey, I'm open, I'm still open, come and see me. So that has been another feature that allowed businesses communication with the community, and also in a time of internet and searching, really helped with their search engine optimization results being listed on a city website. So it was a good win-win for them. Going back really quickly before I move on to the MCCMC with the parklets, one thing I wanted to talk about was the criteria for approval of the parklets. City staff sought to maintain 70% of on-street metered parking if possible in any given block. And you'll notice in your packet, there was an attachment that talked through some of that methodology. When not possible, we would expand that 70% to a 3-block radius if a parking garage was in 1 block proximity of the business. So we were able to do that, and we continue to utilize that methodology as we have transitioned. I just wanted to touch on that. And then lastly, the Marin County Council of Mayors and Council members, both Mayor Kate and San Anselmo Mayor Colbert, chair the recovery meetings. And the purpose of these in the beginning and now have been to share best practices with all cities and towns struggling to find their way in the pandemic. Parklets have been discussion topics, commercial vacancies, what to do with them, how to be creative, how to recruit. The public health signage templates were also a part of that. So that's also something in the immediate days of COVID, we were working with all of our city and town counterparts and partners to help each other through. So ongoing support and transition. Additional things we've been working on are temporary banner fee waivers for businesses who, want to say reopen or grand opening or moving sale. They're able to put these banners up. Fees have been waived. The parklet transition, we talked a little bit about semi-permanent. We found the need arose really during the winter months when we were losing that nice weather and people were thinking through, well, how do I take advantage of still being able to be outside, because that was the safety requirements, but also create a nice dining experience. So from the winterization kind of bore the semi-permanent transition, and really restaurants putting a more significant amount of capital forward to create a nice dining experience, still keeping that 70% parking open on the street variable at focus. And we have extended this parklet program until November 2022. Now, some people have said, gee, that feels too long. But really what we have heard from businesses spending a significant amount of money is that that was really what they needed, some type of certainty to make it worth it. as well as what we're witnessing is consumer behavior. Not everybody feels comfortable dining inside, and we think there's going to be a long transition period. And so we felt like this was a good recommendation. We also are continuing to promote the federal state programs that we talked about. Many of them have had round 2. And so we are constantly working to make sure that businesses know when new rounds of funding come up and where they can go to apply for this. We also are working with our partner at the Small Business Development Council, SBDC. We've maintained our funding support for them, and they've been providing technical assistance for free to all of the small businesses in San Rafael, helping to navigate through these complicated loan programs, many of which have been very grateful to have this resource of technical assistance for them. Programs that we continue, Dining Under Lights is under its second round. Under the first round, we had over 40 businesses participate. In this current round, we have 48 signed up to participate. We're also looking at bringing a modified farmers market back as part of the mix. And so we have some new businesses jumping in to participate in Dining Under the Lights now that the farmers market is going to be a piece of it. The farmers market this year is going to have farming booths, some pre-packaged pantry items, minimal hot food vendors that are going to be part of a BIPOC. I would say it's an incubator, as how AIM is characterizing it, and so we're excited to have that. And we also have Life in San Rafael promotions continuing. So we're continuing our features, going through talking not just with restaurants and retailers, but also some of our industrial businesses who've led pretty key roles like Equipe in helping mass production. And you'll see in this picture below, this is Margarita and her staff from Casa Mañana. We did a podcast, and they were one of the recipients of the disaster relief grants. And it was really very pivotal for her in the beginning months. So you get kind of a feel for what some of our businesses have been experiencing. And also we want to talk a little bit about Mayor Kate's walkabouts and business survey. Mayor Kate, as well as some of our council members, joined her on an ambitious 263 visitations through our community. And really at a time when businesses were feeling increasingly isolated, this connection and visit was so important. And Mayor Kate has done an outstanding job representing the city and sharing that the city is here and cares and wants to keep that connection line open with our businesses. And we are also working through continuous support for Marin Recovers. So as we move through the reopening tiers, I mentioned it's 2 steps forward, 2 steps back. We're hoping the forward momentum keeps going now and no steps back. But we continue with each reopening round to message to the community that here's what is allowed, here's what's not allowed, message to the businesses, how it affects them, what kind of changes, what capacity changes they have. And so that is work we're committed to continue to do. So looking ahead, before I conclude, there's just a few things I wanted to talk about. One was in the analysis part of the report, Keep Marin Working, which is a business, countywide business collaborative in early February and March did a business survey countywide, and they were able to get approximately 1,200 business responses. So a pretty significant business sampling. As city staff, we help push that survey out through both our business license database as well as all of our business listings, through Snapshot and city business listings. And some key takeaways we saw from this that were notated in your report was that out of the businesses surveyed, 78% of them saw declines in revenues. 58% of the businesses used personal savings, credit cards, borrowed from family and friends to continue their operations. 70% of businesses revenue decreased by 10% or more. And 35% revenues were down over 50% or more. So pretty significant hits, kind of matching what we saw from the regional data in Marin County at those graphs at the beginning of the presentation and slideshow. Now, one of the interesting things that came out of the survey was respondents were asked, what do you need? What could we do to help you as we go forward? And 25% responded that they could maintain business operations for the next 6 months if they were able to receive a grant of $5,000 or less. An additional 21% felt that they needed more than $5,000, which was around $20,000 to $50,000. So based on these results, the Keep Marin Working Group is recommending to the County of Marin to consider another countywide disaster relief grant program. And so they are moving through those efforts now, and we will be kept updated on how those efforts evolve. So I wanted to touch on that. That kind of helped shaped, I think, where we're looking going into June and December, through June to December, kind of the looking ahead. So bearing in mind all that we covered, how to help our businesses stay afloat and transition out of the pandemic, what we wanted to get feedback on is where we go next. And some of the things that we're looking at are, one, what we call GEM visitations. GEM stands for going the extra mile. So on these business surveys, these business visitations on Mayor Kate's Walkabout, we were able to get some kind of preliminary talks going. But we'd like to be able to sit down and dig a little deeper and understand where the businesses are at, what are their priorities, where do they see us needing to go next. And so these GEM visitations are kind of the next round of outreach. We also want to look at some focus groups, both for businesses and residents, to talk about what they'd like to see in the recovery efforts. We're also looking at maintaining our recovery programs, both the parklets, the farmers market, the Life in San Rafael business features, dining under the lights. Just keep maintaining those recovery programs that have been working for our businesses to keep that momentum and positivity with customer interaction going. And then kind of in the future, or what we hope to do relatively soon, is start working on reducing some of our vacancies downtown. Now, we have seen some of these vacancies begin to fill. Businesses are starting to feel more optimistic. The stimulus spigot is starting to turn open, and we're seeing more relief programs coming. So we really want to work both with our commercial broker community and other cities and towns to look at creative ways to reduce our vacancies. We also want to research our economic development strategic plan. We'd really like to consider doing one, and we want to look at ways and opportunities of how we could get that done. At a county level, the County of Marin, in partnership with Marin Economic Forum, has applied for an economic development assistance grant to support a countywide strategic economic development plan. But the city of San Rafael is also interested in doing one for San Rafael. So we're monitoring the countywide effort along with our own effort. We also want to support the new stimulus that is coming from the American Rescue Plan and what that means. One of the pieces of that legislation is a restaurant relief fund that is going to have a significant amount of both, I believe, predominantly grants for restaurants and bars and caterers and kind of destination companies. Were hit very hard in the beginning of the pandemic and are still struggling now. And many were applicants and some were recipients of our disaster relief grants in the beginning. So we're really excited to see that in this next tranche of rescue plan cash, it is focused on some of the industries that were hurt pretty significantly. And so with that, I will stop my share so I can see you all better. And I await your feedback. And one last thing before I conclude, I just want to thank and acknowledge all the city departments working on the recovery planning, from community services, community development, building code, police, fire, public works, city manager's office, finance, digital services. Everyone touched and played a role and continues to play an active role in this recovery. And it is because of this that we are able to do so much. So I just wanted to thank all the departments for that. All right.
Thank you, Director O'Leary. So let's be a little bit disciplined on our end, the council's end. If you have any questions of Director O'Leary, now would be the appropriate time. If you have comments, let's hold them till after public comment. So with that, any questions, Vice Mayor Bushy? No, okay. Councilmember Yorenz Gulati, any questions for Director O'Leary? No, okay. Councilmember Hill. Wait till the comment section. That's all I can say at this rate. Councilmember Kurtz. You have any?
Of course I have questions.
Okay. Where's yours?
Can you comment a little bit about hotels? And are they ramping back up again? And I'll just give you all my questions and then you could just they're short. Do we have any ordinances or is it tied to an ordinance in terms of businesses sharing spaces? Like being separate businesses, but in the same spot. Is that controlled by lease or by ordinance? And then any thoughts about dining under the lights on Saturday?
Sure. Thank you for the good questions. So hotels, in the beginning, really rough for our hotels. And nationally, the industry isn't forecasting a reasonable return until 2024. In talking with some of the hotels more recently, they are experiencing better occupancy, but that is a lot of local tourism. And so I think we can expect to see some positive trends in occupancy rates increasing. But I think the long-term travel is still in question. And it has impacted some of our hotel development projects in terms of funding. But I think the long-term trajectory for hotels, we will be back. I don't think it's going to be immediate. And I think as we begin to see the ramp back, it's going to be a lot of local tourism. And that's reflected in what they're seeing in their increased occupancy rates now. So that's some good news. On co-working studios, is that what you mean? Like sharing a space, or is it more of like taking a larger space and having individual businesses inside it?
Correct. It's the latter.
I would have to consult with community development. I'm not aware of anything specifically in our zoning ordinances, but it might because of the intensification of use. I do know that we have co-working studios that have a variety of businesses in there. We did feature one in Life in San Rafael. And I think that could be a definite alternative with some of our larger spaces that have been harder to rent. So that's something worth looking into, and I will absolutely do that. And then you had dining under the lights on Saturday, right? So what we've heard is that Thursday and Fridays are popular. We didn't get a lot of interest for Saturday. Some of the reasons were staffing. It's staffing intensive. And one of the things that we're seeing in the recovery ramp up is staffing and labor shortage. And so restaurants are really struggling to bring staff back. And so BID has surveyed their membership, I believe, twice, if not 3 times. And we have strong support for Friday and Saturdays, Thursdays and Fridays, but not Saturdays as of yet. But we'll keep surveying.
Great. Good information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And I'll underscore that because one of the surveys went out on one of the days that I walked, and it was on 4th Street, and people were not excited about Saturday for the reason that Director O'Leary cited. In fact, they really wanted to talk about that more than anything else. So with that, let me ask City Clerk Lindsay Lara to come online and see if there's any members of the public that would like to comment on this agenda item.
Thank you. If you're calling in, please press *9. If you're calling in through Zoom or if you're watching through Zoom, please use the raise hand feature. And if you're on YouTube, go ahead and submit your comments now. I'm going to give everyone about 15 seconds. There's no public comment.
Thank you. I will close the public comment and come back for council member comments. I'll start with Vice Mayor Bushy.
Thank you. My comment is one letter, K. I want to put a K in front of the GEN. Keep going the extra mile. I think the work that you've done is amazing. I am so proud of San Rafael. When I go down to dining under the lights, I invite everyone at my office. I'm like the official, the official Google Hangout invitation to San Rafael. We've got to keep going the extra mile. We've got to move fast. We've got to be flexible. We've got to be thinking about what they need next, and be there for our businesses. You're doing a great job. Add the K. Keep going the extra mile.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Kurtz.
No, I think it's fantastic. I mean, we know that the businesses they're working so hard, and I know they feel supported, which has been great, because I've been on a number of the walkabouts and talking, and they really do mention that they've been in contact, that they got the information they needed. We see their signs up with the ones that came from the city. So thank you so much. I mean, and we're not out of it. I think you've said that story, and I think we all need to remember vaccines and everything else. It's going to take the businesses much longer to recover, and for the community to be comfortable going out. So thank you for continuing to work with everybody.
Thank you. Councilmember Hill, please.
Thank you, Mayor Kate. Thank you, Director O'Leary. This is wonderful as usual. And of course, I agree that you have done an amazing job and really called out all of the stakeholders that have really contributed to this. As a community, I thought this was one of the shining highlights of what pandemic did. Obviously, there were so many negative impacts, but just in watching a lot of the both in front of the scenes and behind the scenes activities, I really felt like this was the opportunity that really showed how our community could come together. I will also agree that Dining Under the Lights is and has been an amazing program. I did just want to give voice to some community members for whom this has actually created somewhat, I would say, a indicative experience, which is a lot of the businesses that aren't restaurants that rely upon customer base and segmentation that uses vehicles to get there. This does tend to impact, at least by their perception, receipts on Thursday and Friday nights. I just want to give voice to that. I know that we are working through that with BID and with the chamber to navigate that as we're coming out of the pandemic, and hopefully as we move to yellow tier and furthering of the loosening of restrictions, that we're trying to find new ways to adapt. Obviously, I've gone to Dining Under the Lights many times, but I do want to make sure that we're giving that voice here, and that I know that folks know that we're working on it, but I just want to make sure that that's being called out.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councilmember Hill, for engaging those conversations. It is a balance, right? It's always a balance. And Director O'Leary, I know, has been in conversation with the BID too. So thank you for furthering that. Councilmember Lorenz Gulati.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Director O'Leary, for the presentation, but also it is so creative, and I also wanted to thank Mayor Kate for this initiative, because I think as a former business owner in downtown, I cannot even imagine the struggle of going through COVID, losing your clients, having to pay your rent, having your expenses. So this has been extremely hard, and it's still extremely hard for them. So I really appreciate the creativity of the coming up with the featuring the businesses to promote them within our communities. And sorry, I can't think very well right now. I'm a little bit jet lagged, so right now it's like about 8 in the morning for me. but really wanted to appreciate that. And I do have to tell you that when we opened Sabor of Spain, we had this dream to be able to sit outside and, see people going by and, have a little drink, a little bite to eat. And we had a little tiny fence that we put around there that is still there. So I think from a pandemic that it was so horrible, that it is so horrible, it is also the opportunity with the parklets and the initiative on Thursday and Friday night, just going out there and seeing the community. I mean, it is music to my heart. It makes me so happy. So I think we, as Vice Mayor said, we have to continue doing what we are doing and whatever we can do to promote the businesses. I just walked the other day into a new business that was open in August and I didn't know about it. I'm like, wait. So thank you so much for all your efforts. And yeah, we're here to support you and whatever we can do for our local businesses, they really deserve it. So thank you.
Yeah. I have to say that one more shout out to the Department of Public Works and Talia specifically for the parklets, because they are very time intensive and she's been just truly amazing, her and the team, to keep those going because they do create a really beautiful experience. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And I agree with everything that my colleagues have said. When we talk about the economic department, right now it's a department of one, and before it's a department of two. And what you've been able to do, your bandwidth and capacity has been incredible. Everything from showing up in the very beginning at the county of Marin level, they needed expertise. They needed people that knew how to bring experts in. And you were there, and Christina Lilovich were there, our assistant city manager. And you showed up in a way that some of the smaller cities didn't have the capacity or the knowledge. So thank you for that. And your creativity, the posters that we were referencing, Danielle designed those, just so you all know, the walkabout card, she designed those. So, we are so fortunate to have you leading the department and bringing the rest of us along. And we're going to continue to build on everything that you're doing. And as Councilmember Lorenz Gulati said, we're here to support you. So more to come for people that are watching this live and people that are watching it tomorrow morning when they're eating breakfast. I think we've been very clear that the city of San Rafael is committed to supporting our local businesses, hearing from them what they need, and we recognize we're in this for the long haul. So appreciate your leadership. With that, I will ask for a motion to accept this report.
I'll make a motion to accept the report.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Bushy.
Aye.
Councilmember Hill.
Aye.
Councilmember Kurtz.
Aye.
Councilmember Lorenz Gulati.
Aye.
Mayor Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 5-0. Thank you so much, Director O'Leary. We look forward to additional updates and seeing you at Dine Under the Lights.
Mayor Kate and Council, I'm very grateful for you. There's no place I'd rather be, and thank you for such the positive feedback. I'm really touched. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night. Okay, the rest of you can't leave quite yet. We have one more item on our agenda, and it's the San Rafael Successor Agency. There's only one item, so.
And Mayor Kate, it's a consent calendar item as well.
I know, but it's interesting when it says any items held from the consent calendar, and there's only one item. Sorry, it's gotten late, so I'm not going to hold it. Can't hold anything. But are there any, public comment on this item?
Yeah, if you're calling in and you have a public comment on the Successor Agency consent calendar, please go ahead and press *9. And if you can, submit your comments through YouTube. And we'll give them about 15 seconds. There's no public comment.
Thank you. I will close, the public comment. And as we're the San Rafael Successor Agency, I will ask the secretary, once there's been a motion and a second, to call the vote. So is there a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Okay.
I will second that.
Moved and seconded. Secretary?
Vice Chair Bushy.
Aye.
Member Hill.
Aye.
Member Kurtz.
Aye.
Member Urans-Galati.
Aye.
Chair Kate.
Aye, that motion carries 5-0. With that, thank you all for a fantastic meeting. We'll see, staff comes on. We have the diehards. We can wave at each other. This meeting is adjourned. Stay safe, get your vaccination, and we'll see you at Dine Under the Lights.
Thank you.
All right, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.